Boom! The whole house is in view. Boom! What? That's hilarious.
Sorry, I forgot it was connected to that, and I just... Yeah.
That's funny. Well... I'm gonna be drawing. Sorry, Gary. No time. There's no countdown. The intention. I mean, it was purposeful to try to frighten people. I'm just a jerk that way. Welcome, Gary. You know, you know what's weird is like, there's people that I know in my daily life that I don't think about every day. Like I know I've met them in real life. Not in my daily life, but I know them in real life. And I don't think about them every day. But because I see Gary's artwork every day, back on that back wall, on that everybody's just watching you put your shirt down and stuff. Right above Lady Vixen's head there is some of Gary's artwork that I own. Not all of it, but some of it. And then there are books there that are Gary's as well. Not all of them are Gary's. I think about Gary just about every day. It's a little strange. A little strange. Well, I must say that it's been a while since I've actually done a drawing stream. So I don't know how well it's going to turn out, but hopefully good. Right? Hopefully it'll be good. Let's do... Oops. In the world. I'm just setting everything up. You're drawing too? A conclusion? About what, Gary? About what? Jeez. That's what I want to know. What are you drawing a conclusion about? I moved the camera up a little bit. I feel always self-conscious when it's looking like right at my neck. I'm like, hello, everybody. So I moved it up so it narrows my face. You see the bones in my face as opposed to the pudgy neck. Yeah. I'll just pull up this. Boom. There we go. That one's in the same place. I'll probably put this up now. And then, of course, I have to actually turn on the chroma key here. Filters, chroma key, there we go. Wow, holy moly. Get rid of you. And then turn this one on. You're drawing a conclusion about Titan. Let's see, FlyFoxPro says, yay! Hey, I want a normal stream too. Much people arguing with Mike today. What? About what? That looks super bright. It's blowing me out because there's no contrasting lights. Move that back. you're eating tortellini for dinner and a nice applesauce too. All right. It's been a while since I've actually drawn on this. I'm going to even put on my special little Cintiq glove. I feel like a real artist. There we go. Boom. What's up, Nighthawk Warrior? I'm dedicating this stream to Nighthawk Warrior because I think he prefers when I draw and play video games or talk about comics rather than the stuff I've been talking about lately. So this one goes out to Nighthawk Warrior. Yeah, so why are people arguing with Mike? Everyone likes to argue with Mike. He's a very argue-worthy person. I'm just going to start with a circle, a basic circle. Do you know how to do animation in Clip? No, I don't even have the... This is the... I wish. I would do it then. This is just the basic Clip Studio, which I don't think does animation. Does it? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I have no idea how to do it. No, that's the answer. On one of these days when there's like this sale, I'm going to upgrade to the big version of Clip Studio that has all the features and everything. And then maybe I'll try to learn it. But that is not anywhere near what I want to go. There we go. Oh, I guess Mike's trying to help Mitch about the Red Rooster comic deal at Walmart and supports it. So that's not news, Nighthawk. He's done that for a long time. And I understand Mike's position. I don't agree with it, but I understand his position, and I'm fine with him having it. Yeah, the idea of it, but not the way. Yeah, sure. Hello, Grandma Deb. Thank you for coming. I don't know what we're drawing. Obviously, it's a man of some sort or a person of some sort with a head. And apparently, it's a very heroic pose because this is so far is a very static front-facing image. What we could do is just start all over and try to throw in some gesture and like really get something going. Who wouldn't want to get into Walmart? I mean, if your goal is to make money by selling comic books, you could do worse than to get your books into Walmart. Now, I don't know how good that deal is going to do because even DC, it's not like DC has a big bunch or Marvel have a big bunch of comics in Walmart or those stores. So I don't think it's the greatest long-term thing, but you're probably selling more than you would if you're just doing crowdfunding. Right? And if it's good enough, then it I'll do a sort of put a bend in there back. And they got that sassy pose going on. No, we're not going to do that. Undo. Heroic pose. That's what we're doing. Hands on hips. That's all I know how to draw. Just clicking a bunch of times. No big deal. Oh, yeah, I've wondered that too, Lady Vixen. Does Mrs. Deborah Shipman mind if we all call her Grandma Deb? Whether you disagree or agree with Mike, who cares what Mike's opinion of Mitch is? Makes no difference to me. I don't know. People take things... See, here's the thing. People are spending way too much time thinking about these stupid things that don't matter. Like just the most idiotic things that have nothing to do with them. And spending time talking about online when there's real serious stuff going on in the world. Good evening, Arlene. Let's see. I mean, yeah, you do get in trouble when you start talking about how much you love women. Pay money. want a big chest on this guy, right? Like this is going to be a big burly guy. So we want huge, like this guy's really got chest and shoulders that go out pretty far. So we're just going to set that up, right? Like maybe not that big, but we'll fix it. And then he's going to have arms that are massive, just huge. 90s Image Comics. Think 90s Image Comics with this guy. Just ginormous. There are comics at Walmart. I never saw any of the, not that we go to Walmart all that often, but I never saw any of the Brightweiser comics at Walmart. Yeah, how many people go to Walmart for their comics? No, not many. And if you go into Walmart and you see the types of comics that they actually carry on a regular basis, they're Scholastic graphic novels that cost about $8 or $9. If you go into a grocery store with books that has a book section, or Walmart, look at their book section, what you're going to see is Scholastic and other YA graphic novels for about $8, $9, maybe $12 if it's a bigger one. And you're trying to sell me a comic, a floppy comic there for what? $5? $6? What was it? Grandma Deb loves it. Okay, good. Good. How am I today? As riled up as usual. So basically that means I have energy and then it goes down and I have 0 energy. And then I'm like, I need to stream. I need to do something. Get that energy back going. That flowing through my veins. And I'm really enjoying this drawing so far. Too much seriousness in the world. Need to relax. Need to chill out. Jeez, taking everything too seriously. But back to the what P Money was saying earlier. I think it was P Money. People caring too much about stupidity, wasting their time on things that really don't concern them. There's no profit in them for them other than internet clout. I have no desire for internet clout if it means that I have to compromise my moral integrity. If you're making YA comics and making them a graphic novel at a big company that can afford to have lower prices at Walmart, you're probably going to succeed. If you're not, I don't hold that much hope. You could always take a double dose of caffeine pills. Maybe you don't want that. I get anxious. If I have too much caffeine after about like 10 in the morning, I start to get real anxious. Are you kidding? We're trying to... All right, I think it's back. It looked like it was buffering around. I ain't about that life, that buffering life. Oh, the comics that are at Walmart are both DC and Marvel comics, set of packs. Yeah. Okay, so here's the other thing. P Money pointed out earlier, he went into a dollar store and found DC Comics graphic novels for $1. Okay. You go to Five Below, you go to Walmart and these things, you're going to get a big giant pack for about what you would pay for one comic from the comic book store. Grab bag with miscellaneous comics in it. Or go to the dollar store on a regular basis, you're going to see that eventually there's going to be trade paperbacks, graphic novels, things like that there for cheap. I have found Mike Miller graphic novels at a dollar store. Comics are a tough sell when they're available for free online. I was thinking about this the other day. There is so much filth and garbage on webtoons. There's good stuff, but there's so much... Your 12th favorite? Thanks, Skinny. There's so much garbage on there, and people that are actually making quality stuff, they're not willing to put their comics on there because they think, oh, I'm not going to sell as many. So we're just seeding that ground of free comics that kids are reading. The youngsters, the young people are reading. We're seeding that ground to the scumbags, to the ideologues. Who's Mike Miller? Never heard of him. Or her? I don't know. There was an Injustice at the dollar store too. What I saw was actually a Wheel of Time comic when I saw a Mike Miller comic at the dollar store. Which I bought, and I started to read it, and I was like, oh wait, I hate Wheel of Time. Why did I buy this? Just because it's a comic book? And then it was only later I found out it was Mike Miller. I hadn't heard of Mike Miller until he was on like a Doug to Naples stream or something. You've been giving away your PDFs? Yeah. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I think, here's the idea. If you can find a way to make the money, I don't think there's anything wrong with selling your comic, by the way. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, and I'm bad at this too, right? Like that is a way too high for a rib cage, by the way. I'm no expert when it comes to this stuff. But what I am saying is that I think there could be at least some goodness to putting something out for free. We found a decent comic bundle at a $5 store once. Yeah, we did. And it actually led us to buying the trade paperbacks that some of them were a part of, because we got the first issues. So this is what a good model can do, right? They're losing money by printing those comics, and so they sell them at a loss or probably very slim margins, if any, to try to recoup some of that cost. They sell those grab bags to places like Five Below, and then they're hoping to make a little bit of money back. But if they were forward thinking, price those lower for first issues in a really good series with a comic out, put an ad at the back to say, look, this is available. You can get this online, read the whole thing. Here you go. I just don't know why the industry is stuck in such an old method of making stuff. Tiny waist, big giant arms. That's what a man looks like. Gary Shipman says, Grandma Deb found a copy of Packin's Land at a thrift store in her town once. That's awesome. I have found Gary Shipman stuff. Not true. I have found Doug to Naples stuff. I was looking at Gary's name when I said it. And Mike Miller stuff. But no Gary Shipman, unfortunately. I wish. Mike Miller's going to come on here and say, that anatomy's wrong. I love Mike, but chill out about the anatomy, bro.
Hey.
Yeah?
Can you hand me some stuff?
Sure.
What is it? I get you.
Thank you.
Little guy just had a bath. We're just really going 90s Image Comics here. And I'm liking how it's turning out so far. Oh, what else? Skinny says, I've honestly stopped buying comics altogether. I'd rather buy indie books from campaigns. Yeah, There are old things. Like, I buy stuff at used stores. I'll go and I'll look and be like, oh, I'm interested in this. I want to learn from this for my own edification. Or, oh, something I've wanted to read for a long time. Or, oh, that looks really cool. But the last new comics I've purchased were those grab bags, and then the comics that we decided to buy because of those grab bags. This guy's just got like a huge neck, and he needs some shoulder muscles here. He needs those traps. We'll even give him some lats down here. Yeah, there we go. This is just super musculatured. As we. Oh, Gary Shipman says, I picked up an X-Men Essential Volume 2 and 4 at a thrift store for next nothing. And you should. Anytime you see the Marvel Essentials or the DC Showcase presents like old black and white big giant books full of comics, buy them if they're cheap, because those things are out of print and they're never going to, it's highly doubtful to ever reprint those like that. So if you find those for cheap, just pick them up. It's my opinion, at least. See, I'm waiting to get Otis Stein in my hands before I read it. And that, honestly, like, what am I more excited for is people telling their own stories, because I can read a Batman story. I can read all this stuff, but I can't read an Otis Stein story if I go down to the comic book store. And when I did go to the comic book store on a regular basis, the things that I sought out weren't the independent stuff. I just wasn't as interested in it because I didn't know anything about it. And that's one of the beauties of the internet, is you can build up a relationship with these people, or at least get an idea of who they are and what the comic's going to be like before you actually throw down money on it. And that's why I think it's also good to do something like have a webtoon comic that maybe is a different thing, or it's the same, and it's available for cheap or free, so people can kind of get an idea of what to expect. Are you okay? You have at least a diaper on. Thank God. You told a story once. I don't believe it, Gary. Prove it, man. Somebody needs to prove that Gary Shipman has published a single comic in his life. As of now, I have no evidence of this in my hands at the moment. Oh yeah, don't forget the obliques. Yeah, you gotta just get that serration in there. You know. I will make it. I don't want this just to be like, straight down. That doesn't make any sense. So we'll just put some muscles in there. And then we also have this, which is not, people think this is a rib cage. When you see this on like a Greek statue or something, it's not the ribs. It's actually muscles. But I don't want it to just like straight from the... So we'll do it a little bit. And start to put in the abs. He created a comic called Edge. He also did Packins Land comics? Interesting. You know what? That actually sounds familiar. Knocked out a painting. Don't worry, I paid $5 for it at a Goodwill. So what are you talking about? Wait, it even says it. It's even got a signature. You're right. Gary Shipman has made a comic. Wow, this looks fantastic. Man, I should really read this. I think this Gary Shipman guy, if this is who drew it, I think he might have been influenced by Frank Miller in this comic. Oh, and then is this one you're talking about? Packins Land? Yeah. Is it Pawkins? My bad. Pawkins Land. You still have an issue of Packins Land from back in the day? Skinny is a true fan. Once upon a time, there was a mouse. Someone should make a comic book about a superhero mouse. Not a bad idea, Jeff Potts. Not a bad idea. I'm not convinced that Gary Shipman is a hologram. I mean, Gary could just be a really well-made construct by somebody, and it's just a really elaborate ploy to get us to believe that somebody named Gary Shipman exists, you know? And yeah, it's just good hologram technology. And even people like associated with him, like Grandma Deb or Rhoda, his children, they're all fake too. Should we go for like the Superman tights? You know, like just go up here and then throw in a little belt. So we've got the old fashioned strongman tights going on. My ear itches. Scratch deep inside the ear. Who is Gary Shipman? Dang. Is that like who is John Galt? Is that like what we're talking about here? Can you have a wrench? I don't know. Gary, don't be like saying any profanities or anything, because I don't think I can like edit that. So just watch your mouth. You know. Oh, and feel free, Gary, to share links to your website or places where people can buy these wonderful comics. I mean, there are very few of these that you have left, but other comics like Packins Land or Titan House of Might. Wait. No, I'm going to start that. Who is Gary Shipman? Just like who is John Galt, man? Nobody know what I'm talking about? Here I am trying to be literary and intelligent. My audience, just I'm speaking over them apparently. Are you going to draw a Superman type of character? I don't know. I don't like... Here's the thing. I don't know if this maybe will be fine. I don't know. I got canceled the other day because I said I don't like things. So I don't like rip-off Supermans. The only rip-off Superman that was ever any good was Captain Marvel, because he was not just a rip-off Superman. But generally speaking, rip-off Supermans suck. Can you actually time out the owner of a channel? Oh, you want to put me in timeout? You do know what I'm talking about. Of course you do, Skinny. You're a genius. I imagine Jeff Potts knows. He seems like the type. All right, so I need to figure out like just this is his big giant Brock Lesnar sized fist. One finger. You know, we don't have like 16 fingers in case you're knowing. You know, I only have 5 fingers. But he's got big, giant, like, huge Brock Lesnar sized hands. Am I drawing Superman? No. I do prefer a big, bulky Superman, though. I don't like the Christopher Reeve, like, just a normal looking dude Superman. Not a fan. Oh, he's going to sleep? Yeah. I love you, buddy. You want to say goodbye to everybody? Come here. Say bye-bye. Bye. Yeah.
Hey, come on, buddy. Let's go.
Oh, Skinny says I'm about to bounce, so I've got to work on some lettering, work on a script for a new book. What, Skinny? Amazing, awesome, fantastic. Glad to hear it. Have fun. Gary Shipman says, I love that they kill off Captain Marvel, and he stayed that way. See, Gary, I'm not talking about Marvel. I'm talking about the real Captain Marvel. You know, Billy Batson type Captain Marvel. But that's okay. I know you're a big Marvel guy, and that's fine. We don't have to like the same things. your take on the Invisible Man? Is it like, are we having like a universal movie monster Otis Stein universe? Is it in the same universe? Is it crossover with Otis Stein? I need to know. I need to know. Oh. Yeah, see, everyone's talking about Captain Marvel DC. The original Captain Marvel Shazam was from DC Comics. Well, it was from DC bought it later on. Much later on. But they own the rights. What? Skinny's making a universe full of his take on the Universal monsters. Fantastic. That's the kind of ingenuity that I want from you guys. Speaking of ingenuity in writing and stuff, Jeff Potts, how's your writing going, man? I haven't heard you say anything about it in a while. Welcome, lover of books 19. See, all I have to do is start drawing and people come in. They don't want to hear the lectures about ethics and morality. That's fine. It's fine. I'm okay with that. The new book only has a working title of Claude the Unseen. That's awesome, man. I'd be perfect at that, at drawing that book. You know, just put a little cigarette. You can't see him, so just, you know, just throw my hat in the ring. There you go. I'm not just a humorist writer for humor. I can also draw cigarettes floating in the air. Oh, and then you also got to go the sunglasses, right? Like, so just do the sunglasses floating in the air. Just black them in. Boom. Done. Invisible Man. How's your comic? Any updates? No, not at the moment. Here is the latest page I've been working on. Let's do this. So there's the top of it, and you can see it's rough. It's rough. I'm facing some setbacks. But I'm pushing forward, so. Writing's been rough with the whole COVID thing. I've started again, but it's going slow. Okay, man, you keep at it. I started writing a book. I'd already started it. I continued to write it. I got like 10,000 more words into it. And then progress slowed down. Skinny says if you bought his book, folks should start getting them in the mail next week because mail is slow. Awesome. I feel like there's better pages, Nighthawk, but thank you. Thank you. Some aspects of this page I like, and then some of them I'm just like, I don't like how it looks. So I think part of it is I just need to push forward. So that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be showing some pages to people and getting some suggestions about what they think I should do or how I should take it on. All right, we got to finish his abs, right? He's got to have like washboard abs, this Superman type for Nighthawk. You know, Nighthawk loves superheroes more than anything. So, and there was a character back in the day that was not famous at all, and supposedly he's in the public domain. His name was Mr. Muscle. Mr. Muscles? Let me see. Mr. Muscle Comic. I totally spelled it crappy because the keyboard's behind the thing. Yeah, Mr. Muscles. Here we go. Let's just bring it up here. Boom, Mr. Muscles. There he is. Bodybuilder type. Created by Jerry Siegel for Charlton Comics. And drawn by Bill Fraccio for the first 2 issues. A young Dick Giordano provided the premiere issue's cover. Maybe it's Mr. Muscles, not Superman. So that way we just put in like some nipples here. Because he's a bodybuilder, you don't have to wear a shirt if you're a bodybuilder. And that way we don't have to explain why he's wearing like a absolutely skin tight shirt where you can see every striation of his muscles. You know, he's just doing what you got to do. His belt. Well, let's put his belt not rounded, but a little bit more. Like that. Just right. Boom. Boom. Okay, I got to bring back the chat. I can't see the chat. Wow, that's cool. I like the question from DC Comics, which was a Charlton-based character. Yeah. Yes. Who was it created without looking it up? Nighthawk. Honor System. Who created the question? I'm sure you know. Oh, let's see. You've bought your Promise Bible to Coloring Journal Bible, so I'm in your happy place. You are in your happy place. Nice. 12 likes in the stream. Thank you for telling me. That's quite a bit. All right, we're going to start doing some face stuff here. So we're just going to throw down some ears. You know, boom. Perfect. Right up at the top of the ears is where the eyebrows are going to be. Just going to film that. Let's zoom in, right? That's the luxury we have of doing this digitally, is we can just zoom right in there. So I'm going to get all this line work done, and then I'm going to destroy it with my inks. Absolutely destroy it. His name is Steve. Yes, that is correct, Gary. Gary knows. This guy's name is Steve. It was Steve Ditko. Good job, Nighthawk and Gary. You didn't even have to look it up because you think of Spider-Man every time. Nice. Zoom in on the muscles. Okay, P-Money. All right. We'll just give him a little bit of sass on his eyebrows there. He's got some eyeballs, actually. I don't think that's long enough for what I'm going for. So then we'll do this. Boom. You're hoping the muscular person was named P-Money? Yeah, Steve P-Money. What do you think I was talking about? Should we get Mike to make sure this is perfect? No. No. One Mike critique. I mean, look, his arms are too long. He'll come in. Oh, his arms are way too long. Why are his forearms 7/8 as long as his upper arm? That's not accurate. We'll give him a mohawk, right? Let's just go. Right, we said he was from the 90s. So we were going for the 90s, so mohawk would work. You know. Oh, we got to have pouches. It's the 90s, so we'll put a pouch right here. He's got a pouch on his belt. You guys are I'm keeping you from working. Sorry, Gary. You know what I should do is send this to Gary to ink. That way it'll look good. Because if I try to ink it, it'll be destroyed. We'll get rid of this skeleton here because that's throwing me off. His arms are just way too big. They're just so long. It's all good. His superpower is to have long arms. What, Reese is here? Bye. Just kidding. Our work is overrated. It's true. Mohawk looks like a big random raindrop fell on his head. Thanks a lot, dude. You're a real friendly guy. You're real nice. You know? Thanks, man. And just for that, I'm going to make it not, because you got to insult me. I'm going to make it not a mohawk. We're going to do some another style of hair here where he's just got this crazy, like, hairdo. It's like, what are you doing, dude? Why do you wear your hair like that? It's my signature thing, bro. Calm down. Stop judging me how I live my life. Who else is streaming? Who else is streaming, Mark Anthony? Let me see. Is there somebody I follow? I'm going to go in there and tell everybody to come to my chat. No, it's not. Well, I mean, my good friend Eric Johnson of Crossplay Gaming appears to be streaming. And the Comics Bear. It's fine. Daisy Cousins live stream. Australian political commentator Daisy Cousins. Okay. All right. See how it is. That who you're watching? Yeah, don't be judging. The Comics Bear is streaming. There we go. Just like I said. That's right. You gotta just like put the little wispies, you know. Just a couple like out of place hairs here. They call him Mr. Wisp. Mr. Wisp is his name. There are words for people who watch multiple streams at the same time. Oh well, what are they? What are the words? Who is the Comics Bear? You joking, bro. You joking. You got subbed to the Comics Bear. No joke, the Comics Bear is like old school internet fun. You remember the good old days when people just did whatever they wanted on the internet? I just splashed myself in the face with this water. Oh, he's steaming? Oh, you're right. Sorry, I read that wrong. Sorry, P Money, you're right. Lady Vixen. P Money has said that the Comics Bear is steaming. What's he steaming about? Can I give him a robotic arm? What, like cable? Is that what you want? Cable arm? Okay. We'll do it. It's for Nighthawk. We'll just go in like that, make a separation, and we'll just start putting like, you know, we'll need like a big metal glint here. And then this part we'll have some sort of lines like this over it. When I send this to Gary, it's ink. So it doesn't look terrible. Gary's going to have to interpret these lines. These robot arms. There we go. Boom. This one's a robot arm. What we could do is try to follow the shapes of the muscles with some of these, but we're not going to. There you go. Robot arm. Mr. Robot arm. Steve P. Money robot arm man. You prefer cinnamon and butterscotch discs. Not joking, I seldom joke about not knowing something. It is rare for Reese not to know something. Yeah, you should look up Comics Bear. I think you'd enjoy it. Nerds. Yeah, there you go. That's the type of people that watch more than one stream at a time. Gary was probably about to stream. Gary was about to turn on a stream, make money to support his family from his monetized channel. And then he saw me go live, and he's like, "Well, I guess I'll let that guy have a little bit of the, you know, I won't take his audience right away." P Money, I just told Ruth I convinced FlyFoxPro to name him Steve P Money. Sure, we're creating this character together. But I don't want it to just be like P Money like that. We're going to just switch it up a little bit so that it, you know, it's pronounced that way. But it doesn't look like, you know, it's a real name. Steve P Money. We need to establish a cable schedule for all of your streams. True. Factual. Nobody can stream at the same time as anybody else. That's the rules. See, what the goal should be is to say, you know what? It shouldn't matter. I should try to go grab an audience from somewhere else and get a lot of people in, new people from what I'm doing. That's my goal. I don't want it. I love my audience. I love you guys. But I also recognize that if we want to grow, we have to get new people. 15 likes. Can we get to 16? 16 likes. Also, I'm just throwing this out there. No pressure or anything. No pressure. Boom. No pressure. If you choose to. Also, if you guys are so inclined to support my artwork, you can go here and you can buy stickers. Who gets the primetime slots? Probably not me. I'm like the late night, like, not even the late show. I'm like Carson Daily when nobody is awake except for the stoners. That's me. I only stream on Thursday. Simple, same time slot. And on year 3. It's true. Reese is very regular. He's a big fan of internet fiber. All right. Well, here's what we're going to do. I feel like this character has changed a little bit, right? I'm going to go with some sort of cargo pants here. Like, this guy is, just the persona he's given off here seems like he should be wearing fatigue pants, some camouflage pants here. So we're going to go and we're going to just start putting in shapes here. Skin tight pants. I think the best times to claim will be Friday nights and anytime on the weekends. Yeah. When I do things during the morning, sometimes that gets some people in, but I feel like nights are usually pretty good. Fridays and Saturday nights. Because people aren't going out on Friday nights. Before, Friday nights were pretty piss poor. But now, they all have to stay in because there's nothing to do. My friend stream right after dinner. Her time, prime time for her is 3 a.m. for me. Yeah. If you give him a pack of bubble gum, sure. We'll put it, I don't know, where are we going to put it, though? So people can see it. If you could figure a good way out to incorporate it, right? Let's get rid of these. I don't like... It was a funny joke. But now that he's got the cargo pants, that's 90s enough. We don't need the pouches. And the robot arm also helps. He's got a tiny waist and big legs. It's all good. His bubblegum would be on his belt as a buckle. Oh, okay. So it's a belt buckle, like, and it says, it's like a bubblegum package. It says bubblegum. It's his favorite type of gum, too. And then we'll just put in some designs here. So it looks like it's a bubblegum package. And then on the side, you have this single stick of bubblegum sticking out. Boom. Job, Nighthawk. Give him a fanny pack. Okay. We'll put it over his shoulder. He's got a fanny pack going on here. Right? We'll just... he's got the fanny pack on and needs a zipper. Every good fanny pack needs a zipper, so we'll put a zipper in here. And then we'll just... Okay. And then we got to have the strap is just hanging like this, so he's not even... I mean, he's too cool to even... wear it on his fanny, Here's a good question. P Money. In Canada, is fanny butt, or is it what it means in England? I don't know if that's a good question. It's probably not. But It's a question. And then there it goes back up in there. So again, Gary, you're going to have to ink this, so you're going to have to interpret all these lines. I'm not. We already determined you're inking it. And, oh, we got to have the zipper. There we go. Does that look like a fanny pack? Good enough, right? Good enough. I'm just a penciler. I don't got to worry about that. I ain't got to worry about that. Oh, man, what the heck? What are people saying? FlyFox was wearing a fanny pack when he proposed. So yeah, that's true. I was. It was a first aid kit with first aid supplies in it, as well as her engagement ring. So we were on a hike up a huge mountain. My bad. Trying to have a first aid kit. Oh, Gary's getting no work done. I'm sorry, Gary. I failed you. Get your daughter to do your work for you. Yeah, good point. Ruth said she heard bum bag. Gary, can't your daughter Shawnee draw some Titan pages for you and you take a break? Let's see. And you she also heard another name she won't let me repeat. All right, Gary, I will. I will, just because you said so. Remember, this is a robot arm here, and you got to interpret these lines to look like a robot arm. Here's the glint of the metal. I might clean it up some more. We might go clean it up a little. Steve P. Money, right? He needs a superhero name. Make it shiny? Yeah, it is shiny. Look, I got a little... There you go. That's shiny. Boom. Shiny. Happy. We'll even do one down here. Just all the light from every source. Do it right now, live. What? All right, Gary. Just I don't even know how to do my little thing. I'm so excited. Gary's getting no work done, and it's our fault, guys. Yep, with Invisible Man chilling in the background. Invite Gary on to ink it? Oh, I mean, I could. We'll see. We'd have to switch up how we're streaming it, though. Because I'm streaming it on Streamlabs. I guess I could send him a StreamYard thing. We'll see what Gary says. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Oh, come on. See all my secrets that popping up down there. Ain't nobody got time for that. Okay. It's up here. We're going to do a private StreamYard here. Create a broadcast. I'm doing this like totally backwards. I don't know. We'll get it figured out. We'll get it figured out here. Well, see, I started doing this on Streamlabs and not on StreamYard. And so that's the issue we're facing here, as I try to figure out how to do this with that. I got an idea. Here's what we'll do. What I'm going to do is I'm going to send Gary the link. I've now sent Gary the link. Now I'll send it to myself. On so that I can now then join it on my phone, which is now no longer being used as a camera. So Gary can see me and talk to me. What an amazing way to do all of this. Great entertainment as I try to figure it all out too. Okay, well, we don't need this stuff. See, we're getting this figured out for you guys. All right, we'll do. Yes. Yeah, I'm figuring it all out. I'm a doctor, Jim, not a miracle worker. I'm a doctor, not a bricklayer. All right, here's the deal. I also need to send the picture to Gary, too. I mean, that would help. Silly me. Okay. We're finished with this picture. It's as good as I'm going to make it. So let's go ahead and save that as a file for Gary. And then we'll send that to Gary so that he has it. What? Too big? Gotta be kidding me. Gotta be kidding me. Too big a file. What? Stupid thing. Ridiculous. There we go. All right, I've sent the picture to Gary. Now let's go back to this screen. And then what I'll do is I'll go back to this one. I'll go back to me here, and I'll mute once Gary's here. Once Gary showed up, I'll go back here, mute me on here. So then the sound is only coming through StreamYard. And then probably, P-Money, probably that would be easier. If Gary wants to do that, I will also do that. I would also join Gary's stream if that's what he wanted. Whatever's easiest for him. At this point, I've gone through all this work. So what I would do is mute myself on Streamlabs. And then you'd only hear me through the StreamYard. Gary is speed inking right now. When Daniel gets a tech figured out, Gary will say done. Probably. Okay. Here we go. Are you ready? Gary, let me know. I can't even hear him. Let's add him to the stream. Too late, Gary.
What's up?
Hi, Gary.
Am I too late, did you say?
No.
Then what's up?
I think this should work.
I had to restart my computer.
Yeah?
That's why it took me so long to get in here. If you want your All right, there's nothing on my screen. Okay. Let's put something on the screen, shall we?
Yes, we shall. Is there an echo now, guys?
It's probably coming from me because I have my speakers. I can move them away from my mic.
It was on my end, I think.
So this is pretty amazing. This is high tech.
Oh, I know. It's totally backwards, but it works.
All right, should I open Clip Studio or should I use Photoshop for this
What do you like?
masterpiece?
I don't know. What do you
I
like
don't
using,
know.
Gary?
I usually don't ink on digital, but we're going to do it. We're going to go for it, man. We're going to go Clip Studio. Welcome, everybody, to the show. My name is Gary Shipman, and I am co-hosting with the one, the only FlyFoxPro.
Yes. P-Money says, if Gary's voice is there, but you
Is it?
can't see Gary, is he truly there?
Ooh.
Sort of like if a tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound?
I was thinking more like if you give a mouse a cookie. If you give a mouse a cookie, is he really... Never mind. All right, we're gonna copy this. We're gonna go into our clip studio. We're gonna open it.
Nighthawk is glad that I'm able to hear you, have you here as a guest.
Hey,
So
I'm
I can hear
glad too.
myself, and it's really throwing me off.
I never get to go on anybody's channel, so I'm really happy.
You deserve to be on all the shows, Gary.
Hey, look at that. We have a... Ooh, can you... Where are we at on the screen? I can't
That's
look
good.
at too...
I can see it.
I can't look at too many things at once. Oh, okay,
My
I'm
voice
behind
will be
you.
a little louder.
Your voice or mine?
Mine, apparently. I've got to get in closer. It's this is so backwards. I just don't think I'm going to be able to change that, Lady Vixen.
It's not bad, but it's
There. Is that better?
Ooh, you sound good.
So basically, I muted the audio that's actually going into the computer, and what people are hearing is me through my phone. What if you give a fox a cookie? I don't know. Does it make a different kind of noise? What does it say?
All right, so let's see what we got here.
Well, Gary, when did you get a tablet to draw?
I got a Huion. I think I got it last year. But it could have been this year. No, it was. I think it was last year.
I think I remember that.
Yeah, I used to have a Huion that wasn't like this. It was like you just draw on it and you have to look up at your monitor.
Right. I had a Wacom that was like that, and it was super hard.
Do you have a Cintiq right now?
I do.
Nice.
Yeah, Lady Vixen got it for me from our anniversary.
Oh, that I remember. I remember you telling me that.
Yeah.
I asked about it before. So is yours connected to your computer or is it wireless?
It is connected to the computer.
Yeah, mine's connected as well to my computer. All right, so this is Steve P.
Monet.
P. Monet. So let's see how this program handles some powerful inks, shall we?
Let's do it.
'Cause that's what I'm going for, powerful inks. Oh, you want to come up here? Come on. See, you have your child coming up on your lap, and now my cat wants to come up. Come on. Come on. No, forget it. Okay, so this is like my first pen stroke ever. Let's undo it. So let me feel this thing. How does this feel? I'm not a big fan of digital. I hear that the bigger the brush you have and the lighter the touch, you can get some nice variations like that. But these are just rumors.
I think the best thing I did was those Cowboys drawings. You seen that? The cowboy drawing I did?
No. Don't think I have.
Let's see. I can never find where I save anything.
So we need to talk sometime about some stuff.
Okay.
I've really been enjoying your lecture talks.
Oh, thank you, Gary. I really enjoy talking about that kind of stuff. When I was working for a ministry and a church, I did a lot of lectures and talks. So I really enjoyed them, and I've missed them since I stopped doing them regularly. One of the things I like about when Gary inks my work is that it looks like mine, but Gary makes it so much better. It's just as if I was good at drawing.
Well, I kind of like I like what other people bring to the drawing. Like even like Nighthawk. Actually, I think I enjoy inking Nighthawk stuff the most. Not that I've inked a lot of people. I've inked yours. I've inked Dillard Draws, P Money. Actually, Ruth's was really fun.
Yeah.
But for some reason, there's something about Nighthawk's artwork. I just really like it. I mean, I'd love to do a whole book like that.
Right. One of the things I said to Nighthawk, I think a few months ago, was I said his work was so idiosyncratic. It's so much his. You can tell when you see his artwork. And that's a good place to start, because so many people, it looks like somebody else. It doesn't look uniquely theirs. But with Nighthawk, that's his.
Yeah. I think that's a problem that I've had over the years. I mean, it's taken me a long time to get to where I have somewhat of a unique style. I don't think that I do, but I used to just be, and probably still am, just kind of a Frankenstein of a lot of different other people that I admire. I used to be heavy into Arthur Adams. Like, oh man, I just wanted to be a clone of Arthur Adams. And then by the time I was getting out of that, it just seemed like everybody was Arthur Adams.
Yeah.
Like even like Jim Lee, when he came on the scene, it just seemed to me like he was totally taking from Arthur Adams. And
that was my thing. When I first started drawing, I wanted to be John Byrne or Jim Lee.
Oh yeah, John Byrne, totally.
But the style that I draw and I enjoy drawing, I realized was way more cartoony.
Yeah, but John, if you do a John Byrne, you just John Byrne. You know what I mean? It's like I have a hard time. Like there's certain things that he does and only he does them. That it's just so typical John Byrne that anybody doing it, you just know that they're heavily influenced by John Byrne. But John Byrne's great. I was looking at some of that X-Men Essentials thing that I mentioned in the chat tonight, and oh man, it's just captivating. I was looking for something like an end, like next issue kind of stuff. Like how did they handle that? Mm-hmm. And I got caught into the story. I was
nice.
Looking at it, it's just so good. Bless you.
So one of the things I like to do is look at that Claremont Byrne X-Men stuff, and then compare that to Man of Steel era Byrne and see the differences and the similarities and how he grew.
Yeah, I collected Byrne back then, like with the Man of Steel stuff, but I collected even when he was still working on X-Men. Mm-hmm. Actually, I got in like, whoops, what am I doing here? Like, I remember Phoenix Must Die, that issue. when that came out. And that was, well, actually, no. What was the first one I got? I think the first one that I ever got, because a friend of mine had the whole collection of like all these John Byrne issues, and I just fell in love with it. But then I actually picked up my own copy at like a 7-Eleven or something. And I think it was the one right, like it was Dark Phoenix, like right when she was becoming Dark Phoenix, that part of it.
What a time to jump on.
I know. And I didn't even understand the way comic book how they worked. Like, how did you know when to get them? You know, like, well, where do you get them? I knew you got them at like a Quick Stop or something, or 7-Eleven. And I just didn't understand the periodical, schedule. Like when do these come out, and how do you know if you're going to get it or not? So I think I missed an issue because they sold out. And then my friend said, "Oh yeah, it came out." I was like, "What?" I missed it. But then John Byrne quit. Like he just did, like it was like Dark Phoenix, Phoenix Must Die, Exit Cyclops, and then I think the Kitty Pryde issue with the alien? Oh, the Days of Future Past.
Yeah, Days of Future Past.
Days of Future Past, and then the Kitty Pryde one. I don't know when it fell, but right then he was gone. It was like, that was it. And I was like, who's this new guy? What's going on here? So I felt kind of gypped.
So the first superhero comic I owned, so I'd owned like Archie before that, but the first superhero one, was a Captain America book that we got at a used store, and it had a Kirby story in there, 2 Kirby stories actually, and then it had a John Byrne retelling of his origin story. And so that was the first thing I saw, was John Byrne doing Captain America. And then later on, I found out he did Superman. And so I went back and looked at all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't a big fan of his Superman work. I did like it. It's not that I don't like it. I enjoyed reading it. I loved seeing, I think it was Dick Giordano maybe was inking him. I'm not sure. But it had like this light, like a lighter touch to it. Like his X-Men work seemed very like ink heavy, and it had a darker tone to it, just visually. And then the Superman stuff had like almost like they were printing like on a real, like, let's not use a lot of ink, okay? Let's pull back on those blacks.
Or thinking back at the art, I can think about what you're saying.
Okay, so here's some like typical John Byrne. I haven't drawn like John Byrne in a long time, but I used to like to try. But anyways, here's a typical John Byrne, like a nose. He stylized everything. He like wrote, it was like in shorthand. Like there's a John Byrne nose. That's it. Maybe he'd put a little crease up there and put the eyeball. So that's to me, that's just typical. I don't know. He also did this a lot, but everybody does that. So many things have been taken. What? Man, my cat is acting weird. And a lot of things have been taken by people. I mean, I totally take stuff too. So I'm not saying it's a wrong thing to do. And something that Jack Kirby said that I always thought was cool was, he said, the medium of comics is everyone is borrowing from one another. So right. Like somebody might draw a knuckle a certain way or a fist, and you're like, I'm taking that. And I guess Jack Kirby did it. He would see what some other people were doing, and he liked it, and he would adapt it into his work.
So Draw Anything is here, and he asks, is Gary drawing or is FlyFox drawing? Well, I drew the pencils, and Gary is now inking it.
I need to put my fan on. It's a little warm.
You know, because drawing is shorthand, it's not an actual visual depiction of what something is. Everything's interpretation. Even like a photorealistic drawing or painting, there's something different about it. It's not the exact same as if you took a photograph. And as those things are broken down more and more into symbols, sort of like in Understanding Comics, Scott McCloud talks about this. You have these shorthand things that people use. And so you'll see like someone suggest some piece of anatomy, or they draw something a certain way, and then you riff on that and you change it to use it for your own shorthand.
I thought it might be funny if the fanny pack went around his
Nice.
whole chest. But then I thought,
Very manly.
what might be even funnier, let's just do this real quick. Okay, that's one idea. But then I thought it might be funnier to have it go across his,
Just wears it across his chest randomly.
there's it really high, like Dwight.
We'll take the vote of the chat. How about that? They can decide. And one of the things I like to look at is how artists change over time. I know I'm stuttering and saying things really weird right now. It's because I can hear myself a second after I talk.
Oh, really? You got it a little delay?
Because I need to hear you. So I guess I could put headphones into this phone, but it needs to charge. Anyways, so looking at an artist in the beginning of their career versus the end of their career or the middle of their career, and how they change or how they don't. So Jim Lee, I don't feel has changed all that much over time. Obviously, he's improved, but you look at some of that art from 20 years ago, and there's not that much difference. And then you look 30 years ago, and there's still not that much difference. Whereas you look at someone like Will Eisner, and their work changed because they were starting to define how comics were to look.
Yeah, you know what's weird is that I'm not like a huge Will Eisner person either. I'm really narrow with my influence in a way. I mean, there's a lot of really good artists out there, and you'd think that maybe I'd like jump around a lot, maybe, but I kind of don't. I do have a sequential, the art of sequential something by Will Eisner.
Yeah.
And I did go over that like years ago, like when I first did like Pack-and-Slant and stuff. But it wasn't like I used it like a Bible or anything. So, yeah, that's pretty interesting. Something I noticed about John Byrne's stuff, his new stuff, I don't care for it as much. You know what I mean? It seems
Superman, I don't like any of that stuff.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan.
Like Next Man or anything.
No, I can't hear you very well.
No. Is that better?
I can turn mine up. A lot of scratchiness.
Stupid thing will turn on. Oh. Can you hear me now?
Yes. It's
All
a
right.
beautiful thing.
Oh, well.
It's a beautiful thing, I tell you. Whoops. What did this do?
Draw Anything says Jim Lee hasn't really changed, but now his style is a lot looser than before. The core style is the same, though. I think his shading techniques are looser and the lines are less compact.
Is that good?
I don't know. Most of the Will Eisner stuff I like to look at is his later stuff. When he's doing graphic novels and defining them, what they would be.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind maybe looking up some stuff. Like I know that he did like something like the contract with God or something about with God, and that seemed interesting to me. But I've never read it. So, but I would be interested in looking into that.
Yeah, you should. I think you would like them. What's interesting about those books is that he doesn't really use panels.
Oh, really? That's interesting because your voice sounds just kind of weird, but like right now in Packin's Land, what I'm doing, I'm kind of losing the panels myself. I didn't realize that Will Eisner did that.
Yeah, so those books basically don't have any panels
Interesting.
at all. I don't know why. The audio sounds so bad. Oh well.
I'm gonna have to look into them because it sounds kind of interesting to me.
His Last Day in Vietnam book that he did is basically just pencils.
Oh, really?
There's not even inked.
Pretty cool. So there is a way, I think, I know there is, I just forgot the button. There's a button you can hold and you can rotate the page. Do you know what that is? Oops, what did I just do?
It was me, Gary. I clicked on something. The audio's still terrible. So it was worthless.
Found it. The voice is really weird.
Well, Lady Vixen suggested something that, in theory, would have worked. This Bluetooth headset.
It didn't
That
work.
sounds better, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, you sound good now.
And I tried it, but it just messed everything up.
Now I gotta figure out how to get, whoops. Hitting all these buttons, trying to figure out how to rotate this. I can figure out how to rotate it one way. Yes, I can. And it is sweet. It's the sweetest thing I've ever heard. Nice. Yeah, that happened. I have my laptop that I use. It'll get it like to 60 or like 70%, and it'll just die. And it's like, what is wrong with this thing? And then so it has to basically be plugged in all the time if you want to do anything on it. So I feel your pain. StreamYard, yeah. You mean the quality of the video? You're coming through on mine, but I'm listening to you through StreamYards. As soon as you hear FlyFox in the chat, can you guys say that you hear him now? Just so he can kind of try to work out these details.
All right, can you hear me now, guys? Let me know.
I hear you.
I know you do.
Do you see that C-3PO arm?
It's pretty awesome. Awesome. They hear me.
Nice.
So I switched to a secondary mic because I'm using this microphone to talk to Gary, and then this microphone up here on the webcam to talk to you all.
All right, so you're a big Captain Marvel
Right.
Shazam.
Yes, like Golden Age, Silver Age, actually Bronze Age. He didn't actually have comics in the Silver Age because he got canceled before that. And then what happened was in the Bronze Age in the 70s, DC Comics licensed the character from Fawcett, who still existed, I guess, or at least somebody owned it. And they then brought in C.C. Beck, who drew the original Captain Marvel, to work on new Captain Marvel material, and that's what's from the 70s. And then after that, they ended up buying the rights to the character in total.
So did you see the movie, the new movie they did?
Yeah,
Did you like it?
I thought it was okay. I don't like that take on Captain Marvel. I prefer the in the Golden Age, Billy Batson and Captain Marvel were separate. Captain Marvel was not exactly just Billy Batson grown up or like suddenly in an adult body. He was Captain Marvel. He's different. And so that's what I grew up reading. And so I never really cared too much for the it's a kid in an adult's body, which I think is what most people are familiar with because that's sort of how it's been interpreted ever since DC bought the rights to the character. But I thought it was okay.
I did like it, but I also am not. I never read. I did get pick up the Jeff Smith
Mm-hmm.
one that he did of Captain Marvel. I was a little bit disappointed in it. I thought it was going to be different than it was.
Yeah.
And it felt a lot like Bone.
I think it's a tough character. I really do. I don't think there's been that much good stuff outside of what those guys did originally in the Golden Age. And then there's been some good adaptions in the animated series, or like Justice League animated series, or the movie. But I think as far as it goes with comics, I don't think they've kind of understood the character as well, even people that really like him, and they've sort of had a tough time telling those stories. He constantly gets rebooted or retold, and a lot of people that like the original Golden Age stuff just kind of think, oh man, maybe next time they'll get it right.
Yeah, I did enjoy it, the movie, that is, because it was just fun to me. It seemed like it was more like a lighter look at some stuff,
Uh-huh.
at superheroes, I guess. But it did get a little zany, like with that caterpillar and stuff. But I know that's a character.
Yeah, Mr. Mind.
Yeah. So, I mean, I get it, and I'm totally open to if they want to try and do something, and make that, work.
Right.
I'm
They need good
down.
writing. They just need good writing for it. One of the things about DC that why some of that stuff doesn't quite work is because you had multiple companies merging into one. So not only did you have the DC Comics original stuff, Superman and Batman, but then you had Green Lantern and Flash, and all that comes from somebody else. Then you have the Fawcett comics with Captain Marvel. Then you have Charlton, and you're bringing all these things in and trying to make a cohesive world out of them. Whereas with Marvel, you had Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, and Steve Ditko, and they're defining pretty much all of the characters for this world and the tenor and tone of this world as it's being developed. And DC was kind of having to always figure out where, they never had that luxury because they were working with legacy characters and weren't, it was harder to fit them in. And
Yeah.
I think one of the benefits of that is that DC feels like a little bit more, when I think about the differences between them, DC always seemed a little bit more magical to me. Like, I believe that magic could exist in that world, but with Marvel, it always felt more like science fiction to me. You have the X-Men, you have everything that's sort of based in this, Stan Lee's fake science, but still it feels based more around that. And
I kind of like that, though.
I think a lot of people, for me, because I didn't read as much Marvel growing up, I read far more DC stuff. Like most of the comics I read were from the local library. So because they were from the local library, I had to read what was there. And most of the collections were old DC things. There was some Marvel stuff, and I had the Captain America book, and I read some Spider-Man and things like that. But for the most part, the things that I first read and got into were Silver Age, Bronze Age, and Golden Age DC comics. And I think that, not always, but a lot of times what people read a ton of when they're a kid is what they end up liking. And so for a lot of people in sort of your age bracket, like Brian Shearer or you or Mike, Doug Tnaple, read a lot of Marvel because it was just better at that point in time. There was some decent DC stuff, but for the most part, Marvel was just making higher quality comics. And so that, I think, is what defined sort of that generation.
Yeah, I think that it was that's what I was introduced to. You know, I mean, I always knew who Batman and Superman were, but the books that really just that got me were Marvel.
Mhm.
Like that's what it like changed my life. You know, it was just like, this is what I want to do. I want to be a comic book artist. And then after I saw those things, then I got like I was shown things that DC did that was equally as good. You know,
Yeah.
like a lot of it was like the Neil Adams stuff. I was just like, man, Neil Adams, that dude,
Right.
would draw, and then it had that serious tone, like with Danny O'Neill. Was it Danny O'Neill?
Yeah, Denny O'Neil, yeah. So the Green
writing-
Lantern, Green Arrow stuff.
Yeah, the subject matter, it was like they took the Marvel like tone
Mhm.
and applied it to DC characters, and it was just like, wow, this is amazing. But and I guess I wasn't really much into like the I don't know if I want to say sillier stuff, if it was considered silly, if that's offensive or not, I don't know.
It's just comic books, Gary.
It's all silly.
That's why I like calling them funny books when people are taking it too seriously. You're being serious about your funny books, because it's not to say that it can't be meaningful or impactful emotionally, but ultimately this isn't entertainment. It's meant to entertain people, and if that is the most serious thing in your life, or the thing that you're taking the most seriously, or you're going overboard in terms of your love for a certain creator, then I think that's a little bit. I don't know. I just don't think that's a good thing, I guess.
Yeah. Well, that all being said, it wasn't till like years later that I realized, like, I was doing all these drawings all the time, and then I went and I counted the drawings that I did, and I had done more DC characters. I would have considered myself more of a Marvel
Uh-huh.
person, but I had drawn so many DC characters that it just was like, it was like double the amount of stuff, and it's just like, man, I guess I'm more of a DC guy. I never realized it
interesting.
before. Yeah, because I always kind of thought I was more of a Marvel person. But
Right.
if you think about it, or at least for me, I can think of a ton more DC characters that are interesting to me than Marvel ones. Marvel is sort of like,
Right. I think with the way I see it is like Marvel has some really great core characters, but for me they dip off pretty quick in terms of which ones I'm interested in. There's maybe like a dozen that I'm really
Yeah.
like spend some time thinking about. And with DC, the characters just seem more interesting to me.
yeah, I agree.
And then with you, you liked Daredevil and you liked Frank Miller working on that stuff, and then he moved over to DC. So did that at all factor in terms of how you liked that stuff?
Let's see. No, because I was collecting DC stuff at the same time
Okay.
I was collecting Marvel stuff. So my go-to titles, I guess, back when I was in the day, would be like Daredevil, the Frank Miller stuff, New Teen Titans, George Perez, Marv Wolfman.
Right.
I got in like basically at the beginning of that. I don't think I got the first issue, but a couple of issues in, I was on board with that one. I went basically the whole way until it kind of changed names or whatever. They got new artists in there.
Right.
What else was I getting? I started getting Amazing Spider-Man with John Romita Jr. kind of I liked that. I like what he was doing, and now I see his stuff now, and it's like, wow, I like what he's doing. Not all the time, but in general, I think I like his how he sees things. It's kind of cool. What else did I get? I was collecting ElfQuest. After or before Frank Miller left, I think I was mostly just an X-Men, like it was X-Men all the time. And then Dave Cockrum took over for a long time, and I was like, oh, when is this guy gonna quit? I can't stand him. And now I go back and look at those issues, and I love him so much. Dave Cockrum was amazing. It's just interesting to me how we can change over time and start appreciating things that we never did. I'm a very narrow-minded person, and I like what I like, and it's hard for me to like something new. I'm just not into the new stuff, and like I did. Okay, so Alex Ross was new. He's considered new to me.
Yeah.
And I fell in love with his stuff like immediately.
I think everybody did.
Like even his Marvels stuff that he did. I thought that was just fantastic.
Right.
And the guy can do all of it. He does the storytelling, beautiful drawings. The guy's amazing. And I can't say that for everyone.
When I want to, like, for example, Lady Vixen's dad, he hasn't read comics since he was a kid. He read like Classics Illustrated was the only comics he was allowed to buy, and he still got them. He's like, he has them in a like protective sleeves and like in a binder, and he showed them to me. He hasn't looked at them in years, obviously, but he hadn't read a comic in a really long time, and so I was trying to talk to him about comic books, and so what I showed him was Alex Ross, because for a person that isn't into comics or hasn't been for 50 years plus, they I think they kind of remember it as from when they were kids. And so with Alex Ross, especially someone from that age group, it's like, that looks like a Norman Rockwell painting. Like, that looks like you just took these superhero characters that we all know and love and put them straight into like Norman Rockwell telling a story with them. And there is even people you see that do like similar a painting style like that, that's, I don't want to say photorealistic, but that like just heavily painted stuff, it doesn't look quite the same. Like, they don't have that feeling of like Americana that Alex Ross puts into his work.
Yeah. He doesn't even do comics anymore, does he? He just does like covers or something.
Yeah, he hasn't done anything long form in a really long time. I don't think, I can't even remember the last thing he did. Maybe Justice, where he painted over somebody else's pencils. I think like Doug, I can't remember, Braithwaite or something. I can't remember the name.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. It's a little bit different because it's somebody else's pencils, but I think that was the last time. And then mostly he does covers and things like that. This is why Gary should ink all of my stuff, Skinny. I think Skinny thought I was inking this at first, and he's like, holy crap. But no.
I'm kind of experimenting because I'm not a digital inker, so this is sort of new to me.
I think it's turned out.
I'd prefer to just ink this in the real world.
Right.
But it's kind of fun to explore new things.
I think that's one of the obviously it's one of the advantages of digital, is that you can try something, and if you don't like it, you don't have to white it out, you don't have to try to correct it and fix it. You just erase it, just undo, and then I can ink this again. I think it also, one of the issues though is that I think sometimes limitations are a good thing. But yeah, this does look I mean, you don't often see you doing a lot of it's not really hatching, but a lot of shade work like this.
Yeah, I like it. You know,
I like it though. It's looking very much like the '90s character we were going for. So, Nighthawk says that Alex Ross has been doing Marvel covers and is doing that Marvel book that has all of his drawings for all the Marvel characters. So like pinups and things like that. Which I mean, at some point, he probably makes way more money just painting that stuff than he ever would. It takes less time. You know, sort of like Art Adams. Like we don't really. I mean, I don't expect Art Adams to make another comic. You know, he's drawing covers and he's drawing pinups, and that's how he's making his money. And maybe those guys, like Art Adams, are working on some sort of passion project, but I don't really expect to see them suddenly come out with like, oh, Spider-Man with Art Adams. Remember, Neil Adams did that Batman comic, like
what was that?
It
What was
was-
it called?
Batman Odyssey or something, and it's
Odyssey.
so terrible. It's incomprehensibly bad.
Oh man, I saw him at a convention. He was trying to push that book off on people, and I was just like, and he's like trying to give. He's all, this happened. This really happened, and it was just like, yeah, it's a dream, dude. He's like, do you know how this happened? How this is possible? How Batman could do this? And we're like, it's a dream. And it's like, dude, it's not that hard to come up with that idea. But the artwork in places is okay. And I think he had Bill Sienkiewicz help him out on some stuff in there.
Really,
And his kids too, I think.
it's some weird stuff, man.
Yeah, I don't own it, and I don't want to. I think it's sort of a sad thing, but I guess I don't know. Especially with the old timers, it seems like that you kind of lose it.
Right.
You know?
Well,
And I
that's what's
guess-
that's what's
Go ahead.
interesting about Will Eisner, right? Because we were talking about Will Eisner earlier, and talking about the contract with God, or Last Day in Vietnam and stuff like that. And he started telling more mature, in the sense of like, I don't know, grown up themes, grown up stories, like talking about his life in New York as a Jewish man, all of this stuff. Like that was a way for him to sort of age gracefully away from those things. And not everybody got that luxury. Like Kirby certainly didn't. Like there was occasionally where Jack Kirby would get some freedom to do something at a company, and he would do something kind of interesting or different, but it just wouldn't sell. And I'm not even talking about like at DC. I forget, there was some place he worked where he did these like big grand comics, and I just don't think those.
Destroy Your Duck.
Yeah, Destroy Your Duck, with Steve Gerber. But like you have these guys where, because of the nature of comics, they kind of have to sort of try to keep a hold of what was popular, and there isn't as much experimentation.
Yeah.
So Skinny says it is hard doing digital because there's no resistance. Well, if you're drawing on a Cintiq or a Huion, or what's another one, XP pen, there is resistance. So like, you have the pressure sensitivity of
Yeah, these
these
stones.
tips, and these usually, I don't know how the Huion is, but the it's not exactly a really smooth screen on this Cintiq. It's like you can feel it's a little bit rough, and so yeah, iPad is just glass. Like it's just
Yeah, this has a layer on it, but it's
Yeah.
still, it's not like drawing on paper.
right. And they try to
And they do-
simulate that, but it is different. Like it can't
Yeah.
be as it can never be as it should never be as good. Like, I could draw really amazing things on this and really work at it and get something that looks really fantastic. But the things I'm most proud of are when I really nail it on pencil and paper, because it's like I don't have it feels more challenging, and at the same time, like, it feels like I get something I like a little bit better. Like, it's weird to explain.
On paper.
On paper, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't mean I always nail it, but it's much more satisfying when I do.
Yeah, I'm not big on this right now.
Well, it's
But-
working, Gary. I'll tell you. Like, this is probably is this the most extensive thing you've done like this on the, as far as
Yeah.
inking on the? It looks on par with most digital inkers, I would say. I think you've been able to translate. I mean, for the first one you've done.
You're being pretty generous.
Certainly better than mine, but that's not saying much.
This is yours.
Well, I mean, but the inking's not mine.
You're pulling these inks out.
True. I'm just not great. I
It's
suggest
all
them.
you.
They were just really tight pencils. You know, just the tightest of pencils. All right, so
Have
there's
you
just
noticed that you've gotten better with your drawing lately?
I just haven't been drawing much lately. I don't know. Do you think I've been getting better?
This is a decent drawing here.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Carrie. Yeah, I did feel like I did really well on this one, to be honest with you.
This forearm right here is really good.
Thank you.
I love that.
So, when I went on Drawn and Quartered, I practiced that drawing that I did of Wolverine. Like, that day, I practiced it a couple of times, and I really wanted to get the forearm right. And then when I actually came to the Drawn and Quartered, I like Popeyed it, and it didn't look like a great forearm. So I've learned my lesson.
What was the lesson?
To draw good forearms. No, that it basically I had this big curve that just looked like a banana that went from his elbow to his wrist, but nobody noticed it at the time. And then I did sell that piece to somebody, so hopefully they never noticed that the forearm looks terrible. I think I don't know if I sent them. I sent them extra art though, so that makes up for it.
Hey, I think that art is supposed to be the interpretation of what the artist wants it to be. That's why I don't agree with like all this, correct anatomy stuff. It's like, give me a break. It's like, really, Todd McFarlane, you're gonna go in and tell me that his anatomy is correct, and yet he's killing it.
Well,
People
yeah,
love it.
like because I grew up reading. I mean, at the library or the newspaper, things like that, I much more gravitate towards that cartoony style. And so for me, with things that I draw when I'm drawing for fun, when I'm drawing to learn, obviously I'm going to try to draw from life. I'm going to try to draw models and things and people in poses and try to get that correct so that I can learn. But when I'm drawing for fun, it inevitably goes more cartoony because that's what's fun for me.
Yeah. And I think that's what it's about. I think that it'll show if you're enjoying the thing that you're doing, whether or not somebody else will enjoy it.
Right.
I guess that's up to them, But I don't know. I'm not all.
Well, it's like taste is subjective, right? We can look at a good drawing, like look at a really realistic drawing and say that's good, but not my style, because like that enjoyment factor of something is subjective. And though, because there can be so many varied art styles when it comes to comic books, not everything just appeals to everybody. And so like people say, oh, I really like this. Oh, that's not my thing, Like for me, Ethan Van Sciver I recognize as a good artist, but it just doesn't do much for me because to me it looks a lot like a Mike Miller or somebody else or this, and the figures look pretty similar, and there's just not as much interesting stuff for me. But like you go back to something like ElfQuest, like you mentioned earlier, or I don't know, Bone or something that's more cartoony, and it's like that's what I'm going to gravitate more to because that's the kind of artwork that I'm more interested in. It doesn't mean that Ethan Van Sciver or Mike Miller aren't good. It just means that for me, what I look at and what I want to spend my time reading is like something like this.
Yeah.
Like an Asterix and Obelix comic. You know, with like all the things I can learn in here, and then I see these guys draw things that look like beautiful, but they're doing it in a cartoony style, or like sometimes they get more realistic and it stands out. I know you probably can't see this, Gary, because you're looking, but there's this.
Nerd.
You know, there's, if you were watching on YouTube, you can see this. I'll make it
I
bigger
have to
here.
look on YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of small, but that looks. I can see
That's
it
not
looks
right.
nice.
I don't know what I did. Yeah, but you can see like this drawing of this boat right here. Like it stands out because everything else is cartoony up until this point, and then you see this beautiful night image, you know, looking up at this boat. And there's other examples, but like I think that stands out a lot more because it. So like when you're doing filmmaking, classic filmmakers, they want to take that they want to save that close-up shot for a specific purpose and a specific reason, and they're going to use those things more sparingly. And I think one of the ways, a lot of people, they'll change up the shots or like the way that the shot looks, or like they could do away with the panels or big splash page or something. But one of the things that Japanese comics, manga does well, is that it's accepted that you can just switch up your style real quick, right? So you can go from a way more cartoony style to something super serious, or if it's more serious, to something way more cartoony, and it's accepted.
Right.
I think that used right puts emphasis on that scene, and it makes it more comedic, or it makes it more serious when a character suddenly goes from being like, you know, goofy, noodly armed to like suddenly he's standing in a really heroic pose with like, you know, and you see the rage on his face or something because it's drawn really detailed. You've gone in and you've rendered it a ton, and you spent a ton of time on it. That makes it more impactful, and it can suggest more emotion. Whereas if you're just doing it in the one realistic style all the time, then it's like, yeah, there's other ways to put emphasis on that. But don't you want all those tools?
Yeah, I think we do. I mean, I do. Something about being realistic that always kind of strikes me is like Calvin and Hobbes is not realistic, but it is a superior,
Right.
far superior book.
Yeah, and then that guy, and then he draws a dinosaur, and they're like, yeah, he could do whatever he wanted.
Yeah, I mean, whether he can do it or not isn't
Right.
even the point. It's, to me anyways, but it's like people are making the argument about, oh, you have to do it this way or it's not good.
Right.
I disagree. I think that if you can make it work whatever way you do it, you know. Maybe you can make it work another way. And I think that Calvin and Hobbes is a perfect example of that.
Right.
Because that guy rocks.
Yeah.
There aren't any better comics. I mean, there are, but really, it's like he's at the top of his game. I mean, that Calvin and Hobbes run is up there with all the greats, you know. And he didn't have to do it using accurate anatomy all the time.
Right.
And if he did use accurate anatomy, it was sparingly, like with a dinosaur, which we don't even know what the anatomy looks like.
Yeah, so it just looks like a really realistic drawing.
Like a dinosaur to me.
Yeah. So draw anything, he says. He's been on the fence to read Bone for a while. Would I recommend, and you too, I guess, he get the complete set or one book? The reason is he's on the fence, and he doesn't really like fantasy adventure stories. So my opinion is you should just go ahead and get the complete set because it's going to be cheaper than buying them individually, most likely.
Well, I think I have the complete Bone.
Yeah.
It's one volume
Me too.
edition, and it's a paperback.
Yeah.
I don't think it was that expensive, and it's like huge.
Yeah.
And I would recommend getting it in black and
Yep,
white.
same. I was about to say that. Like, if you get it, just try to get the black and white one. because the color really doesn't add anything.
It actually takes away.
Yeah.
Even my daughter, my oldest daughter, who is aspiring to be an artist herself, she had the color version of Bone, and she was like, "Dad, I don't like the color. I don't know what it is." And I was like, "Yeah, me neither." And the color was done nice. It was a nice coloring job, but it just takes away from the story somehow. Now there are some people that all they want is color, and
Right.
that's fine. Then you can have the color version of Bone. But I think that it's at its best in black and white.
Because that's what it was designed for. When he's thinking about composition and things like that, he's thinking about it in black and white. And the color really is an afterthought. It wasn't. It was something that when Scholastic wanted to print it, and he's going to sell millions of copies, then he's like, oh yeah, I guess I'll let you guys color it. As far as the fantasy adventure thing, it's really, yes, it's set in sort of a fantasy world, but it's not like, I guess you could classify it as that, but it's not really, it's not exactly Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. Also, too, this is my feeling on Bone. Bone is up there too, top tier.
Yeah.
But that I think that it starts really good, and then it it even hits some really high points in the middle. Maybe there's some really great stuff in Bone, and then at the end, to me, it kind of
it didn't live up to the rest of the.
No, it's almost like I'd rather just live in the first 3/4 or something.
It's definitely worth it though. So he says he doesn't like Lord of the Rings type stuff, fantasy, not big on magic. There's not much. There's like a dragon. That's about the extent of the magic you're gonna get in Bone. Otherwise, it's just pretty good writing.
Yeah, it's really good. I mean, I had to be convinced myself back. A friend of mine named John, he owned a comic book store. He was the one who actually got me to read ElfQuest. I wouldn't read ElfQuest. I saw the pictures of ElfQuest, and I also, if you get ElfQuest, I recommend getting it in black and white. Although the color's good too, but
it works somehow with that. Like I want to see if I can find the black and white, because you can read a lot of ElfQuest online for free on their website, and so I've read a lot of that, and it does kind of work. But then I went back and looked at some of the black and white, and then even when they first colored it back in the day. And that classic coloring, I think, looked better than the nowadays, where they've got the shading and everything.
What it is, all that rendering, airbrush stuff.
It's like if you've ever seen anybody do that to a Kirby piece, it just does not work. It does not work. Yeah. His art just does not lend itself to that, and so it looks super off. Now, Grandma Deb says that you guys had a cat named Hobbs, or we had a cat named Hobbs. She says.
She did.
That's what she says. We had a cat named Hobbs, she says.
Yeah, that must have been her, because I never had a cat named Hobbs. What was I going to say? Oh, anyways, the friend of mine, John, who told me about ElfQuest, I would see, he would always pick up ElfQuest, and we'd have these debates like back in the 80s. Like, what's your favorite book? And he's all, ElfQuest. I'm like, come on, John. And Daredevil is coming out, and New Teen Titans, and all this really good stuff. And he's all, hands down, ElfQuest. And I'm like, give me a break. He goes, well, just read one. I go, look at the artwork. It looks ridiculous. He's all, just read it. And I sat down and read it. He was right. It was so good. Now, I'm not saying as the story progresses and they start doing spin-offs and all kinds of other stuff, but the initial ElfQuest stories, and they did a lot, they were good. Oh, it's so good. It has like I guess romance, it has comedy, it has adventure, it has just so much. It's just such a good, well-rounded book story. And then later on they got too big or something. They did something wrong, and they just started doing ElfQuest everything. ElfQuest peanut butter. No, I don't know if it, but ElfQuest was really good. And then the same thing with Bone. He told me I had quit comics at the time. I quit for like 10 years. I gave up because I became a Christian, and I saw comics as just like the base things of the world, and there's nothing good in comic books. And so I said, well, I'm out. I'm done. So I quit. I threw out all my artwork. A friend of mine went to the garbage can and got it. He got mad at me for throwing it out. I'm like, whatever, if you want to go get it. And he went and got it. Apparently he still has it, which is unfortunate because it's a lot of bad stuff. But so then for like 10 years, I was just out of comics. And then I went over to see, but I still have my friends, and he owned a comic book store. And so he said, have you heard of this book Bone? I'm like, no. He's like, you got to read it, man. It's so good. I'm like, whatever, I'll read it. So I read it and I was like, wow, this is actually good. And I said, but you know what? It's a black and white book. Who buys it? Who cares? He said, no, it's doing really good. People like it. I go, you got to be kidding me. And if it's true, I got a story to tell. And so Jeff Smith was very influential indirectly with me getting back into comics again and doing Packins Land, because that's what I did. So Packins Land came from that. Interesting, I guess.
Well, that's what I think. I was thinking this earlier. I think people, it's an advantage to people when they're willing to try something new, when they're willing. I don't like that particular genre. Just give it a try, because you might not know what connects with you, because good storytelling is good storytelling, regardless of the trappings that it's in. And so, it's like when someone says they don't like fantasy, it's like, okay, well, let me make a couple of suggestions. And if you don't like these, that's okay. It's not for everybody. But, when you recommend something to somebody and you say, hey, just give it a try, you never know. And it might inspire you. Like with you, you kind of had gotten out of the first, the Elf Quest, you were like, I don't think so. And then later when you had gotten out of comics, somebody's, no, really making that recommendation to you and just trying something different. Nighthawk says that the inking with the C-3PO arm is looking great.
Well, thank you, Nighthawk.
And Mark Anthony says it looks pretty.
Thank you, Mark. I guess the more that I do on this, probably the better I'll get. That's my hope.
Yeah. Well, I would say, because you actually know what you're doing in terms of real life inking and on with pen and paper, it does seem as if for the first time doing something like this, you have been more successful than when most people start it for the first time on digital inking.
Yeah, I mean, this is the most extensive I've ever done. I have fooled around a little bit. I have like filled in some backgrounds like on Titan and stuff. Actually, I want to show you. This will be an exclusive.
Sweet.
For you guys here, because you mentioned about how Will Eisner was not using panels, and Titan is starting to get sort of like that. Where are my pages at?
Here, the true fans are gonna pause it and they're gonna be looking at each page. Okay, has he shown this page? What page is this? Oh, is this the secret?
Where is it? Oh, I know which one I'll show. I don't want to show too much because I feel like I show an awful lot. But here's, can you see that on the
Holy
screen?
cow. Holy cow, Gary. That is fantastic.
And that's one I didn't draw on stream.
Yeah.
And but there's like no panels to it, but yet I'll put the words in and stuff like that, and it'll it'll have a story to it. You know, it's not just like a pinup or something. So there's something actually taking place in the story, but
Right.
free of panels, sort of dreamlike and weird. So it's weird that like there's stuff like this going on in Titan now. So I've been exploring all this different ways of telling a story, you know.
Yeah. Well, I
Okay.
think that's one of the beautiful things about Titan. Like even the first one, when he sort of gets zapped with his powers, and you have this, this really like trippy page with the stretching arm, and then you've got like lightning going across it. You've got these people that are these other mice that are like calling out to him, and just really crazy panel, and it all works. I think you've in that book especially, when you look at Packen's Land, there's not as much of that, right?
Oh yeah.
And it shows, I think, for anybody that looks at Packen's Land, and if you haven't, I did a review a while ago of the first issue of Packen's Land, and I talk about some of the things that I think, not to get too praiseworthy of Gary, but some of the things I think that Gary really is a master of, even right at the beginning, that he had this sense of how to tell a story and how to have good action and things. But one of the things I like about Titan is comparing that to Packen's Land and going back and looking at that. It shows how much not only did your drawing and storytelling ability, but also your willingness to sort of step out of the comfort zone and try something crazy, try something that like is a little bit nuts, and it usually it works. And it worked in the first Titan, so I think that's cool.
Yeah, some of the reasons why Packen's Land is as tame as it is, to where it almost seems like it's a child's story, is because at the time I was doing it, I was trying to get into Christian bookstores, because back in those days there were Christian bookstores to get into. And so I was trying to get into Christian bookstores. I wanted it to be friendly, family friendly kind of stuff. But in doing so, I learned a lot of things about, like, even the way like Christian movies are. And I used to be very critical of like Christian movies and stuff, but I realized they're up against something. And what it is you cannot show certain things. And even if you were to do the Bible,
Right.
if you were to make a visual representation of the Bible, there are some things that are described in the Bible that should not be
Well, that's one of the things.
depicted
Yeah,
visually.
I try to talk about this is basically like there's a part in the Bible where a woman gets raped to death, gang raped to death. You're going to depict that? Like, I don't think so.
Oh yeah.
But it's necessary to recognize that kind of evil in the
Judges.
world. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, there's some bad stuff in there. But it's there to show like the moral depravity.
right.
But when it's done in words, I think there's a filter
Yes.
that we have naturally in our brains, to where words don't always have that shocking effect. So you can get away with like prose,
Right.
but when it comes to visual stuff, it's dangerous. Because you can, like, even like I remember watching Prince of Egypt, the animated thing, and there's some stuff in there. It's like, you know, how do they like? There's a scene, I guess, where they took Zipporah into Moses's chambers when he's still in Egypt, and then they have, I guess, it looks like the shadow is that she's tied up in the bed chamber type thing, and it makes your mind immediately jump to that. But then when they pull the curtain back, and they do it really quick, so you have to kind of see the movie a few times maybe to even catch it, but maybe not. I mean, I caught it the first time, so I'm sure everybody did, but they did it really fast, so it's not like we're going to dwell on this too much, but it had this feeling of like, oh, what's going to happen here? It's getting kind of racy. Right. And then they rip the curtain back, and it's their teacher, servant or somebody, and so it's like, oh, okay, so they didn't do it. But even in that, just that little simple little thing, they went somewhere visually that maybe some people don't want their kids seeing that kind of a thing. And so when I was doing Packens Land, I was like, how do I tell a story? How do I tell something that would have like stakes to it, you know, like, and really make it like, oh, this could get people involved in the story. It was really hard because I didn't want to depict certain things. I didn't want female characters to be so voluptuous that, you know, I mean, and there's a tendency, especially in comic books, for that to be the case, and it almost seems like that's the only thing that's keeping comic books alive sometimes, is, you know, making characters, sexualizing them and stuff like that. And I really don't want to do that. And I'm tempted at times to do certain things. It's like, well, if I was to make this a little more, you know, let's go into that area a little bit. Yeah. So in some ways, if you're in comic books and you aren't going to do that kind of stuff, you're setting yourself up. Right.
Well, it's like there's
don't do it.
It's not that you can't depict immorality, but you have to do it in a moral way. Like, you can depict sin, but don't do it sinfully. And I think that's the balance that a Christian artist has to strike, is how do you be true about the world that is depraved, like you were saying? It has this absolute level of moral depravity where things actually happen that are truly heinous, and that's being true about the world, but also balancing that with, you know, not depicting women in that way, or giving over to like just grotesque violence.
Which, that's the other thing. I go there too sometimes.
Which, like, there's you know, I think there's a balance in that. Like, you know, you watch something like Saving Private Ryan, there's some pretty realistic violence in that. And we kind of contextualize that, but I don't find something like a Saw or like Hostel or some of these like slasher torture porn they call them movies, like I don't have any desire to watch those, because it's the context, right? Like, the context of a historical event like D-Day is going to be, you know, contextualized and seem more appropriate than when you're just doing it for some sort of sensationalized horror story.
Right.
And then for me, like, I think that the horror in something like Aliens or The Thing, which does have scenes of like incredible violence, is just better horror because it's used sparingly in order to have some sort of impact. So it like goes back to what we were talking about before with, like, if you use something in a way to have a good impact on a story, then, like, instead of just overdoing it, then it's actually going to be more meaningful and stand out.
Yeah. So that is the real big reason why Packens Land is as tame as it is, because I wanted to do a comic book and I wanted to grab people, but it was very difficult to do that and not feel that I was somehow compromising my beliefs or feeling like maybe I'm putting something out that's going to make people, I don't almost like what is it called, like I lost the word, I don't know, but anyways, I guess that's enough of that.
So when you go back to Packen's Land eventually, because you have, do you feel like you have the freedom now to then, I mean, I obviously want to try to probably keep a similar tone, but do you think you will try to do some things you might not have felt free to do back then?
Maybe. I think that I've learned. Well, one thing that's really good about just the way that Packen's Land is laid out is that it's mostly animals.
Yeah.
So it isn't like I'm having to depict human beings doing things, because that's one of the things I think, like back when they did, like there was like comic books and maybe even some superhero movies that or even TV shows and stuff like that, where they would have the superhero fighting. And so the easiest way to show violence to where it's like, well, this isn't that bad because they're fighting robots, or they're ripping the head off of a robot. Then it's like, okay, we figured out a way that we can show some violence without actually showing it hurting people.
Right.
So that's one of the things I was thinking about, putting a disclaimer in Titan in the second one saying that no actual mice were harmed in the creating of this. And I still may, just as a joke, but because I put that mouse through some stuff, man.
Yeah. Well, even the first one, like, I did the review where I titled it, what did I say, like the comic that made a grown man cry or something. And it's totally legit. Like, that's totally true. I did cry, but because, like, my own struggles over this past year of depression and post-traumatic stress disorder. Like, I don't speak about it online very much, obviously for obvious reasons, but that spoke incredibly to me in terms of, like, because the character was brought so low. And when you have those moments of pain and suffering, then eventually, hopefully, Gary's not a pessimist, and we'll see some redemption and some triumph by the end.
Yeah, I think it's gonna get worse before it gets better.
Hey, that's like real life, man. That's like real life. You're like, how could it possibly get any worse? I remember a few years ago, like, Lady Vixen and I, we had this period of time where, like, our water heater went out, like, our car broke down, our dog was only like 3 years old, died suddenly, and like our entire savings were wiped out. Like, all these things just right after one after another. We're like, all right, what's next? What's the next horrible thing? And I think we kind of expect life to be easy, and in reality, for the history of the world, life has not been easy. And to think that we are going to have it easy in our lifetimes, I think, is naive. And especially as Christians, there's two things that are promised to us no matter what. And that is that we are going to face incredibly, terrible suffering, not only for being Christians, but just because of the state of the world. But then that God will also sustain us and preserve us, is that other promise that's made is like, yes, you will suffer. That will come. But God is enough. Jesus is enough to sustain. And I think those are things that, like, because they're often so, like, coupled in the Bible, there's a passage that says, just as the sufferings of Christ overflow into our lives, so does the comfort of Christ. Those things are linked, for a reason, because people are going to face suffering no matter what. It's best to then lean into Christ.
Yeah. Amen.
Let's see, Draw Anything mentions the Action Bible. It's Sergio, right? He drew that, I think. Is that the one? You heard of that?
Sergio,
Is that his name? My
I don't know.
Action Bible. I am familiar with that. He's been on Drawn and Quartered sometimes. Isn't that his name? Sergio? I could be totally.
Oh, yeah, I know who you're talking about.
What's his name?
I keep thinking of another. There was another.
Yeah, Sergio Cariello.
There was another Bible that was done by a guy, but he passed away, and he was like this, like an old timer at DC, I think. And I can't remember his name.
Yeah, I've seen that. I know. Yeah, I've
But
actually.
it was really good.
Yeah, I've
This
actually
looks
seen
like a
that.
song.
Let's see, what else have people been saying? 21 likes now. Thank you, Nighthawk.
Woohoo!
That's more than a Gary Shipman stream.
Right on, brother.
We've merged the audiences.
Yeah. Get some real likes in here. Come
Yeah.
on.
So I got this cool comic book. It's #1. It's even signed Gary. It's called Edge.
Sounds great.
There's some decent stuff in this, drawing wise.
I find that hard to believe.
There's like 1 or 2 panels where I'm like, yeah, I can see Gary's artwork in this. I'm just being silly. It definitely is like that 80s boom stuff, though. Like that black and white boom from that period.
Yeah. That was my first gig, man. I thought I was going to be all that.
Little did you know, Gary,
Yep.
that you would someday be slumming it on a show with May.
Slumming it.
Edge of Oblivion, Captain Hilt says.
The Edge of Oblivion. It would be nice to get that character, maybe get the rights or whatever from the guy,
Yeah,
and do like a redemptive story. That'd be cool.
that'd be interesting.
Do something redemptive. Something I wanted to do a long time ago too, and then Alex Ross kind of came out and did it, but in his way. Was before Alex Ross ever did anything. I was thinking of a story where it took like all the Marvel universe, and it was basically the end of everything. It was the end of the world, and Doctor Strange was going to be the one who started realizing it because of his whatever, maybe you'd say spiritual side or whatever.
Yeah.
He realizes that basically there's a real God and a real end of all things is coming, and he's like brought to like this born again situation, and the Marvel Universe characters are like basically like, what is going on, what are you doing? And he's like, no, I've seen the truth. And he becomes like this spokesperson, or I don't know, like a sort of a prophet, but he kind of denies all the things that he ever did, recants it, burns all this stuff, and it's just like, nope, the end is coming and all this stuff. And I had this, it was an idea. It was before even I did Packens Land. And then I thought, oh, I'll never be able to get that done. And then now today, forget it. There's no way. Although, who knows? Maybe there is a way.
Well, so just wait. If you live long enough, those characters will enter the public domain, and then you just have to live like to be 150, and then you'll be good. That's probably that'll probably do
it. The anti woke culture, I don't even know what you call it, but anybody who's not woke, that'll start becoming more prevalent again, and then like common sense will start to reign again.
I can only hope. Captain Hilt says, get the rights to Edge and purposely make it the worst comic in the history of comics, Gary.
I would crush it. would become
Best,
it'd be bigger, be the biggest thing you've ever seen.
best superhero comic of all time. People are gonna be like, The Dark Knight Returns. What's that? I'm an Edge fan. I'm the Edge fan. No big deal.
That's right.
Gary Shipman.
Opening scene of the Edge book would be him walking on top of Dark Knight
There you go.
comic book,
Just stepping right on it with
Just
his muddy
stepping on
boots. Yeah, there you go.
dropping a smiley face with ketchup on it.
There you go. Yeah, like just throw all those references in there and say this is better. It's better than them. Johnny thinks this mainstream comics industry is dying. I think because of woke culture and cancel culture. That's why I think crowdfunding comics have become more popular. Yeah, it's certainly possible. Although it's like I say, because there are a lot of comics out there that are available for free in various places, either legally or not. One of the struggles is that people are having to compete not only with those free comics, but they're also having to compete for people's time on their phone. So Netflix, YouTube, Hulu, whatever they're watching or doing on their phone, you're competing with all of that. And so you kind of have to do the hard work to build an audience and then deliver on it so that you can maintain those people that are interested in your work and are willing to pay for it, and then you build on top of that. Because as the comics industry, if it does indeed die, or if it just becomes less and less relevant than mainstream, quote unquote mainstream comics, in terms of actual comics, not like their adaptions, which are incredibly popular in mainstream, if those were to go away, it's not necessarily just going to lead to independent comics rising, because those people aren't necessarily going to go there. You have to kind of win them over. That's my thoughts, though. P Money says, I admit it was cool watching Gary gush over Dark Knight Returns. Yeah, that was a good. I liked that stream. That's what kind of. I think I mentioned that to you before. Like, you doing a video where you look through and you talk about what speaks to you in those comics and why you like them and what the comics do well. When you were looking at that artist edition, which was amazing. I wish I had that. It was fantastic. But that's always nice to see when you see somebody that is at a pretty decent level themselves, whether it's a film director or comic book artist or somebody looking at somebody else's work and saying, this is why this works. This is why this is good, or this is what influenced me. And yeah, that was pretty cool.
Well, thank you.
P Money asks, what makes manga comics? I call it manga usually, but I'll pronounce it right this time. What makes manga comics grow while other comics die? What do you think, Gary?
An audience?
Audience, right? Well, basically, let's think about what happened. I mean, there's so many reasons why. I think it's not just one reason. Like the show I did earlier, which is unlisted, by the way, now, because there were so many problems with the buffering.
Hey,
and all that.
I found it and I watched the whole thing. I really liked it.
Oh, thank you, Gary. I like doing those. But I mentioned earlier, there's no cheap solutions, right? There's no easy answers. It's more than one thing, right? You can look at people like comic books. It's a good medium. For various reasons, the American comic book industry, they just let people down. Basically, like Gary said, right? When you quit comics, Gary, it was for content reasons, ultimately. Like these just weren't books that you wanted to be putting your time and effort into because of the content that was in them.
Well, it wasn't necessarily the comic books. I mean, like, I can't really say that the comic books got worse. Like, like the last thing that I remember getting, well, the last things that I read that were good back in like real time, not like I went later on and
Yeah.
found something that was a lost gem or something, but the last thing I remember buying off the stand and saying, this is amazing, and it's like the best is yet to come kind of stuff, was Dark Knight, Watchmen, Camelot 3000, things like that.
Mhm.
It was just like, oh, this stuff's getting good now. And then it's just like almost full stop. It's like, where's the next thing?
Yeah.
And it's like, there isn't anything. What? I mean, and it's like, yeah, there was some good artwork that came out, but to have that perfect union of showing pretty pictures to tell an actual good
Right.
story.
So then, right, like we're talking about that period from the early '80s to like the late '80s. There was a ton of good stuff coming out, and then it was the rise of the artist, and the story sort of took a second seat, and then you got the image stuff where it's like it's much more style over substance in a lot of ways. And I think for like when I look back at the industry, and I like if I am sort of to try to pick out what happened, you have the direct market, you have comic book stores, and then they become associated with this style of comic that's over the top, brash, big chested women, busty women, lots of violence and action, and guns shooting everything, and comics were tainted at that point. It wasn't like, and then the crash happened. You know, after that, it started to go down and diminish, the industry as a whole. And so those comic book stores, they were no longer in good parts of the cities that they were in. The real estate that people could afford if they were having a comic book store is often in places that people that had money didn't want to send their children, at least in big cities. And so I think because it sort of became this like small niche, but also had this stigma attached to it. Whereas you had these kids who were watching things like, you know, watching anime, they're watching Dragon Ball Z, you know, all these shows that are on Cartoon Network, Toonami, and Adult Swim and stuff that they're watching, and then they've got these comics that they can go into Barnes and Noble, and their parent looks at it and they're like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, I get that. It provided a way for those parents to spend their money on their kids on comic books that didn't require them to go to places in the city that they either didn't know existed or just didn't feel comfortable going to. It's not to say those stores don't have good people working there, but predominantly, at least in the places that I've lived, comic book stores have always been in the city, in areas that are far away from the suburbs, and take time to actually get to, and are in great areas. And I think that's part of it. And then you have the easy accessibility of the manga in Barnes and Noble or in Borders or even online. And then you had a lot of these kids watching Naruto or these other anime shows, and it just, that industry got supported in a way that comics just didn't after that point. They sort of got left behind, and then the periodical nature of it. If I spend $12 on like a manga book from Barnes and Noble, I'm gonna get like at least a complete arc, right? But if I go and spend $12 at the comic book store, I'm gonna get 4 single issues of a comic. Probably not even if it's the same comic, like maybe I'll get the arc, but probably not. It's probably not going to be a 4-issue arc. It felt like higher quality. It felt like more. And one of the beauties of this sort of freedom in publishing now with crowdfunding or selling to people directly and cutting out the middleman, in terms of a store, but having your own storefront and putting, having people say, here, go here and give you the money, or you'll support this comic being made. and printed, it frees people up to tell complete stories, or to at least tell things a little bit longer and not just worry about that like single issue mentality, because the periodical is dead. People want something, they want to binge, they want to have a full experience, I think, when reading something. And so I think that all of those things factor into why manga has eclipsed American comics. But there's all kinds of reasons. I'm sure someone could look at the numbers and have a different idea of what they think might have happened.
Well, I was never into manga, whatever it is, but I was into. Is it still considered manga or manga if it's the animation?
So, well, I mean, it's anime. It's just like Japanese animation. So, anime and manga just means comics. But we call it manga here it's Japanese, so origin. But, so, what anime did you like, Gary?
I'll just list them off, not in any order, because some I think I like better than others. But like Nausicaa was a big one.
Yeah, Nausicaa.
Lensman. What else? Megazone 2-3. And there was some old stuff. I think it was called Star Blazers or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Or Wildstar or something. I think that might have been the character's name, Wildstar. And that, I'd have to probably look, because it's been so long. I mean, it was back in the 80s and stuff when I was. So basically, all of my comic and Japanese animation stuff was all from the 80s.
Right. Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, that's the he sort of became an adult at the end of the 80s, Gary, so it's not surprising that your interests deviated after that.
yeah. So anyway, the reason why I left comics wasn't necessarily because the comic, I mean, there may have been some books that were coming out that were great, like on par with like X-Men, Daredevil, Frank Miller's Dark Knight stuff and Watchmen and all that. There may have been, and maybe I just don't know anything about them. But I also became a Christian.
Right.
And so those two worlds collided, and I had to make like a huge decision. And I thought that comic books were not going to be in my life ever again.
Yeah.
And so I was out for like 10 years, didn't even bother. I mean, I think like Batman, the Batman Tim Burton movie, one of them came out. It may have been the first one. I'm not sure.
89.
But Prince did the music for it.
Yeah.
Is that the first one?
Yeah, that came out in 89.
Right. And then they did, I don't know if it was still the first one, like Jerry Ordway did an adaptation of the movie into a comic book. And I was just like really torn, because I just wasn't very new. I was a new Christian and everything. And I was just like, oh man. And I was really into Prince back in the day.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I was pretty messed up. And you know what's weird? I still am. But I feel like the Lord is helping me a lot. But anyway, so there was a lot of things that were pulling me to come back and stuff like that. But then I just abandoned it, and then slowly came back through like a different way. And I even think that when I came back, I still don't feel like a comic book artist.
Yeah.
I'm not in that world, and I don't know those people. You know, I mean, I know Mike a bit, and Mike has been very gracious to me over the years. But I think the reason for that is because Mike, he sought me out back when he had he was starting his own publishing company back in, I don't even know.
Early 2000s, wasn't it?
Oh, it was like maybe 17 years ago.
Yeah.
He was doing like Alias. And you know what? Alias would have worked, but he got him and his owner, Brett, they got raked over the coals so badly by the printer because you live and die, literally, you live and die by getting your book out at the time you say you're going to. Back then, through like the diamond distribution stuff, and it was their first stuff. I don't even know how they could have not had that problem. They didn't know. They were new to it. They didn't realize, and their first run of books, their first issues, they missed their deadline, and it just killed them. It killed the company, and then nobody wanted to buy the books anymore. Alias would have been probably a huge company, maybe the size of Image today, if they would have been able to get those books on time. But they made a fatal error, trusting the printer. It was overseas, and they didn't deliver, and they lost their company. Sad, but or maybe not. Maybe maybe it's good.
Well, it's one of those things where like you look back and you say like, what if this had been different? But God in His providence, often the paths that He has for us are not what we ourselves would want. It's like, what is that? The proverb that says, man plans in his heart, but it's God that orders his steps, God that determines his steps. Like we often have these grand plans of the things that we're going to do, and then we don't know what the influence it will have later. Like I imagine that when you were a younger man and you wanted to be the next big comic book penciler, and you had these grand plans, but God destroyed those. I mean, let's be honest. Like you didn't become the big Marvel or DC pencilist. Penciler. God had a different path for you that took a lot of winds and it was a long and winding road, so to speak. And you've ended up at a place where your influence may not be as not as many people have seen your work, but the work that you're doing is yours. It's what you want to tell. It's the stories that you want to tell, and you can be as blunt and as explicit in your themes than as you want to be. And so it's like maybe God's plan was harder, but or not as lucrative, but it might be more rewarding.
Well, I'm having a blast, that's for sure. And we'll see how long it'll keep going. But this year was amazing how the Lord worked things out to where I could keep going,
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are going through a lot of hard times right now.
Right.
And who knows what the future holds. But yeah, it is a wonderful blessing to be able to, I can write the story that I want to write, and I'm only, I guess, pressured in a way to conform to the way other people do things. I'll try not to be so cryptic. Like I'm only pressured by my own feelings. Like, say, for example, if I feel like the book would do better if I put like a very voluptuous woman on the cover, you know what I mean? That's my battle. Like I'm going to have to decide, do I want to sell out in a sense to myself, and do something that I don't feel would be right for me.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the things that I have to deal with, and it's like people, and then there's times where people want me to draw this superhero, and that superhero is known for her
curvature.
For her curves. And it's like, do I do it or do I not do it? So the blessing has been that I've been fully occupied up until you pulled me away to draw this drawing. It's a lot.
I'm sorry, Gary. I'm I'm sorry. Terrible.
Look at those
terrible.
curves.
Yeah, he's very curvy.
But yeah, so that's where it's like, what do I do to try to make the stories that I'm doing more interesting to people without feeling that I've compromised?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's what's going on. That's where I'm at.
Right. I think basically after the culture sort of went into this idea of like, oh yeah, we can use profanity, we can show nudity, we can show violence. They forgot, they substituted those things for good storytelling, and they forgot that some of the greatest movies that have ever been made were made before those things were in movies. It's not those gratuitous things that you're forcing into things that make them good, but it's the actual fundamentals that are behind it. And I guess it's certainly possible that people might buy more of your comic if it has a girl running around in a bikini with a machine gun fighting zombies, and oh no, the bikini has now been snagged on something, and so she's devoid of that garment.
Snagged.
What
a bubblegum wrapper.
Yeah.
Oh no.
I suppose that can be lucrative, but it's definitely something that you have to be more creative, because that might be more lucrative, and you do have to be more creative, but you're also thinking back to what a time before that stuff was the norm, before that stuff was just, oh yeah, that's fine, yeah, we'll have a movie or a comic full of this stuff. And there's stuff, the great comics don't have to have that stuff in it to be good. The great movies don't have to have that stuff in it.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating too. What makes these certain comics so good? Like the ones that are really good that don't have that. Mm-hmm. Like, say, I would say Bone isn't overtly that way. No. There may be just a little, romance, but it's so little that it's like nothing. Yeah. And then you have like Calvin and Hobbes, which there's nothing. It's like, and yet it's so writing, good. Yeah.
Well, like with Calvin and Hobbes, it's like we Doug. I've stolen this from Doug, but Doug says, and other people say it as well, but basically, like what is true and beautiful and right. Like if you're depicting those things, you're saying what is true, and you're being perceptive about the human condition, like Calvin and Hobbes, where you're being accurate in your depiction of what a child is like, and then a precocious child, and and then it's not just about children; it's actually about all of us, and you have this. He had this ability to talk about some really deep themes, but also make it really funny, and so it's the talent and the hard work, putting it all into it. Grandma Deb says good night. Everyone take care.
Good night, Grandma Deb. Thanks for coming over.
It's sort of like we have on our shelf over there, we have two of the complete collections of newspaper strips. One of them is Calvin and Hobbes, with a complete collection of Calvin and Hobbes. And then the other one we have is The Far Side, which is totally different, but I'd say some of the best comics ever made. Vastly different than Calvin and Hobbes.
It was into Far Side. Weren't they just like one drawing?
They're single panel gags. But it's like it has to do with, I think, for some people they put a lot of effort into the artwork, and
that's where I was.
And the drawing sort of the story. The drawing becomes the main thing, and the story sort of takes a second place. And we're talking about the Image comics, and it's like I understand why people might like those comics or they enjoy that style, but going back, I mean, Captain Hiltz pointed out, he said, there's not many arcs that people can name as being really good stories from that era. It doesn't mean you can't enjoy them, but or that they're bad, they're dumb or something, or you're dumb for liking them. But the reality is, if those stories just become about serving the artwork, or if the depiction of violence and sex becomes so much that it is frankly sinful, what are you just not working hard enough? Like, are you taking the easy route? And some people might feel like, no, well, I'm telling a really edgy story, but in reality, it'd be much harder for them to tell a similarly impactful story without all that stuff in it, because they're so used to putting that stuff in it. But it's like with Doug has one book that has foul language in it. It's Black Cherry, and it's decent, but his stuff that is geared towards children, or is more appropriate for children, I think is better. I think it's better because Doug, those constraints often make people work harder to tell better stories. Limitations are what makes art ultimately good. It's not, absolute freedom of expression in art leads to someone, taking a dump in a museum and calling it art, which has happened, depicting just like a piece of feces, or like sticking a crucifix in urine or something. It's like, is that like you have? But when you place limitations both morally, ethically, and then also artistically in terms of like what you can't accomplish, that's when you have to work to develop things that are quality. Like you get those, like we were talking about shorthand earlier, like developing these ways to portray something or to tell a story that might have an appropriate sexual element to it. Like, I mean, like not like either a within the confines of a marriage, like these people had sex, now they're pregnant or something, or like even depicting an immoral sexual act in a moral way, right? Like I think it is within the bounds of. I think it's okay, and I think it's allowable to have a story that is about or has an element of rape in it. But I'm not going to depict that on the page or in the film that I'm making, or I'm not going to describe it in prose in a very overt way. It has to be done appropriately.
Yeah.
And I think but by placing those limitations, it causes someone to have to work harder and think of better ways to portray something. I think of, like, I can think about just a quick example here of, like, if you depict a scene of, like, this is a serious topic, but this is, I go deep on my shows, but like if a person was to portray something like molestation, and they show this person entering a child's bedroom and closing the door, there's something implied there. And then if the next panel is then the child crying in bed, that's way more impactful and like visceral and terrible. And you've not done something immoral by depicting the act in and of itself. I think not that I would want to write a comic book about that features that, but it's like I think there are ways that require people to work harder or to think more, to plan things out, or to think about what they're doing. Whereas if they just draw a big busty woman fighting monsters, they might sell more comics. But is that what you're hanging your hat on? Is sales rather than telling something good or putting out a quality product? I don't know.
Yeah, that's the thing to me. It's like, do we have anything that's worth telling?
Yeah.
And it's hard. I'm not saying it's not hard, and I'm not even saying that I do.
Right.
That I have something worth telling, but I'd like to try. I'd like to take a crack at it, and I think that, everybody will have to be the judge for themselves, obviously, in the material that they consume, whether it was worth consuming or not. So yeah, these are you wouldn't think that things would be so deep in comics, in funny books.
Right.
But yet they do get deep.
Right. I think one of the challenges that I think people face is they're tempted to just tell, like, to mistake adult themes for maturity. Like they mistake sex and violence and things like that for maturity or good storytelling. And you look at something like a C.S. Lewis, Chronicles of Narnia. Those are deep books with complex themes and just all of these serious topics that are displayed in what's a children's book. And there's other examples we could put that don't have to have sensationalized things in it. It doesn't have to have the violence or sex to make it good, or even like cheap dramatic content, like there's you think of any type of like chick flick or rom-com or something where they've a misunderstanding, or this character was lying and now they found out, and just cheap melodrama. And often it's the stories that are quote unquote for children that have those themes distilled down to a point that is most beautiful, because people have worked really hard and they're like, I want to tell a complex story, but I want everybody to be able to consume it. I want everybody to be able to watch it. And then at that point, it sort of becomes this great piece of art because of how hard they worked to make it accessible, but also maintain those complex themes. Nighthawks likes the design for the needle in the background.
Thank you.
He also is blaming Mike. I'm not sure what for. But earlier, Captain Hiltz asked, do younger generations even know what good stories are? Or is the quality just so low they don't know different? What do you think, Gary? Should we just...
I don't know. My friend Rick and I were talking about like Star Wars, and how like I just don't have any I could care less about Star Wars now. But back when it first came out, like I saw obviously the first ones and all of them. The first two I think are the masterpieces. A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. When Empire Strikes Back came out, we had no background we had there was none of this, all this other Star Wars stuff. It was
Right.
just those two movies. And when that Empire Strikes Back came out, it blew our minds out of our heads because we'd never experienced anything like that in storytelling. And then just leaving you with a cliffhanger. And I know that there were other, like, Flash Gordon was like a cliffhanger kind of a
Right.
thing, stuff like that. But I don't know if those had the impact that
No,
the Empire Strikes Back did. I would
Right.
even say the Empire Strikes Back is probably the best one.
Mhm.
But you need the first one to build to the second one. And we thought when the third one comes out, oh my goodness, it's going to be on. And it wasn't. It wasn't on. And so then the movies took a drastic turn in a different direction. And we were hearing things back when Return of the Jedi came out that it was going to be Ewoks and that Lucas kind of sold out to make a plush toy. What are the, not Ewoks? Did I
Wookiees.
say Wookiee? They were supposed to be
Wookiees.
Wookiees, and they made it Ewoks so that he could sell toys. And he gave the okay on that, and we were all like, "What? Like, could you imagine
Yeah.
Wookiees?" That would have been so cool. But anyways, so all the Star Wars stuff that's come out after, even the reboots that they've done now, are so like, okay, let's see what they did, and like I can watch them, and I can even to a point appreciate them a little bit or enjoy them. Not really, though. I mean, I have a hard time with the prequels. But I was talking to my friend, like I said, and he was saying, well, the young people that watch them now, this is their Star Wars.
Right.
Like, this is Star Wars to them. Ours was back then when we were younger. And I get that. So is it that we are, we have a bent towards what we thought was good and we can't break that mold? And it just, to me, it's sort of like, I guess that's part of the growing up process.
Right.
It's like we just grow up and it's like, it's a movie, it's no big deal. Star Wars it's just a story. It was good for the time, and now we move on. Sort of like comics.
Right.
It's like just comics. And I don't know. So I'm not sure.
Well, I think there is some of that. Like, for example, my little brother is not as opposed to the prequels because he was much younger when he saw them. And I think after he grew up, he kind of realized the bad parts of them. So I think the kids that grew up with that, or that was their Star Wars, they do see that as good because it's what they liked as a kid. But there is also this element, I think, of philosophy that changed. The people that we grew up reading the comics from or seeing the stories from so often were people that were influenced by modernism. They believed in different ideals. And then postmodernism came along and influenced the people during our lifetime. So like an Alan Moore is a postmodernist. There's some other postmodern elements like in some things and some Frank Miller. But for the most part, they're still operating on the same sort of classic ideas of depicting true things and not just deconstructing things without an idea of remaking them. So then postmodernism comes along, and the idea is then that it's going to be all about deconstructing the stories of the past. And you have something like Watchmen that's a deconstruction of the superhero genre. And at first it's like this wild and crazy thing. But then the next generation, all they grow up on is those initial postmodernists like Alan Moore or Grant Morrison or people deconstructing the superhero comic. And so they're deconstructing the deconstruction of the superhero comic because they didn't grow up reading Silver Age comics or Golden Age comics or even Bronze Age comics. They grew up reading these postmodern comics. They grew up seeing these movies that were made by people that were trying to deconstruct a story or a genre rather than to tell a good story in that genre. And so their goals then become to deconstruct these deconstructions, and you have all these people that grew up not really knowing the classic way of telling a story. They base it all on these deconstructions or like some analysis of myth and all of these things. So you can even go back to George Lucas. Like Lucas based a lot of his storytelling on the myth. This idea of myths from Joseph Campbell, analyzing those things like the Hero of a Thousand Faces, deconstructing these classic myths and saying like, what were the common elements, and then Lucas creates a story based around that. And the initial time is like it's not just a deconstruction; it's a celebration of those genres. So like he loves the serials. You see that in Indiana Jones or Star Wars, looking back at those classic forms of storytelling that he had enjoyed, and he's celebrating them. But what are the kids, the generations that came afterwards? They're now only experiencing the homages and the deconstructions and not the original. And that's what becomes popular, is like, well, how can I subvert these tropes? I want to subvert the tropes. I don't want to be.
So that's what like J.J. Abrams
Right.
is great at.
Yes. And Rian Johnson did that with The Last Jedi. He wanted to subvert the tropes and he wanted to switch things up and change them on their head. But he did it too much. And so all the characters are just like annoying and you have no love for them because they're just constantly poking at the classic myths. You think about in not even in Last Jedi, but in Rise of what's the first one called? Force Awakens. Finn tries to grab Rey's hand and run with her, and she's like, I can run by myself. And it's like just this little moment, but it's this idea of like the classic story is this man coming in and being heroic and leading this woman away from danger, but he's not even allowed to do that. And then you have Rian Johnson come along and destroy any kind of heroics that Finn built up in the first one by doing nothing with him, making his character superfluous. And it's like that's what it becomes. It's like we're deconstructing this male toxicity, this masculine identity that all these stories have, and we're gonna change it up and be different. And instead of going into it and wanting to tell a good story, they go in it wanting to subvert the tropes or defy expectations or whatever they're trying to do. That's not tell a good story. That's not their focus. That's not their main focus. And I think it's a huge part of why the stories nowadays, kids have grown up on constantly this postmodern art that isn't building anything up, but is only destroying what came before it in a lot of ways. So Captain Hill says, I grew up in between generations, and objectively, the originals are far superior storytelling. Same here. I'm in that weird generation that was born in the 80s and grew up in the 90s, where like we're experiencing all this old stuff before everything new takes root. And so you have, by the end of the 90s, you have a lot of the things I'm talking about have taken hold completely, and all the modernists are moved out. Not that modernism is some great thing. It's a deeper topic than this, but like Star Trek, for example, all of the writers on Star Trek up until nowadays really were these classic science fiction writers or classic television writers or people that grew up in a different time of storytelling. And now you have all the people that are working on it are obsessed with subverting these Star Trek tropes, and so they just destroy Star Trek. It's no longer Star Trek, it's these characters poking at fun at all of the classic quote-unquote tropes of Star Trek, or like the silly things about Star Trek, whereas all the writers up till that point had taken Star Trek seriously. But now it's a joke. Like now it's like, well, it's got to be gritty and dark because that's what people like. Or, well, I mean, they don't believe. Part of it, I think, is because the modern people that are writing those things, they don't believe the same ideals that people used to. They believe that the system is inherently corrupt and evil, and so because of that, they have to destroy things like the Federation. The Federation is based on a hierarchical, patriarchal system that is based on things that are here in today's society. Therefore, it must be racist. It must be whatever. So, well, we've got to make the Federation be the bad guy. We've got to make everything way more inclusive and change everything. And it's like, well, that's not. You're focusing so much on that stuff. You've lost the core identity of what made Star Trek good, or you've lost the storytelling element to it. And yeah, I don't know if that answers Captain Hilt some ideas from both of us. What do you think, Gary?
I think that you're right. I can appreciate some of it to a certain degree.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like them, you know, deconstructing certain things. I think that's one of the things that I did actually kind of like with what Frank Miller did with Daredevil and Batman and stuff. But then the thing that I liked more was them pulling out of it. You know what I mean? Like coming back from it.
Right.
The redemptive part of it. Like even the first Superman. Well, I mean, it's not the first one, but the one with Christopher Reeve, where I know that it's really cheesy and things like that, but I liked seeing him, like with Lois, like he failed, you know, and then the solution that they chose to do with him going back in time, you know, that's now everybody and their grandma's doing that, but I think that I really liked seeing the character reach that level of, like, you know, desperateness and stuff. So I did appreciate it, but they didn't. That wasn't so much a deconstruction, I don't think.
No, it's just classic storytelling.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it could be sort of construed that way because they brought him to that brink to where he lost it at the end. And the same thing with like Daredevil. Like Daredevil actually is more of a deconstruction because like there's a story, I guess it's the Born Again story, where he basically is brought so low that it becomes a criminal himself. Right. You know, he just becomes horrible. I didn't really care for that, but I did like the redemption.
Right.
And so I think that's the thing that's kind of always intrigued me about some of the stuff. Even like with Watchmen, I enjoy Watchmen, but I'm kind of let down by it by the end of it.
Right, because that's a good example, because the difference between the Frank Miller's Daredevil stuff or The Dark Knight Returns. I haven't read the sequels, and I have no intention of it. But The Dark Knight Returns is like at the end of The Dark Knight Returns, there is a tiny bit of hope. There is him as a changed person, not the horrible vigilante that he is throughout the book. Right, there's a change, and the same with we're talking about with Daredevil. With Watchmen, you're left in that place of despair. Like the bad guy ultimately wins, and the person who was, I mean, I don't want to say the most ethical or moral, but with Rorschach, but like at least had a moral code, right? He then is just, you know, it's nihilism. It's like, okay, like then I'm gonna die.
The journal gets tossed.
Right. Yeah.
Basically at the end, so it's like there's no hope. This story is gonna get buried.
Right. And you see that where like something like The Boys or these other comics, or it's not really about. They put these characters through a ton of pain, right? Like Grant Morrison puts Animal Man through all this kind of pain. His children die, or his son dies, and like all this terrible stuff happens. And then the end of his run isn't like redemption for Animal Man. It's postmodernism. So of course it's metafictional, like he suddenly meets Grant Morrison, and Grant Morrison's like, yeah, you're a comic book character, and yeah, I'm the one that's responsible for killing your family. And it's like, what, how does that, that might be interesting the first time you see it, but then when everybody's doing that, everybody's leaving their characters in that place, that's not, I don't think that's good quality storytelling. Letting you do that. Oh, there are a lot of people talking about Star Wars in the chat, Gary. They're rewriting the sequel movies, saying what they would have done differently. Nighthawk says that he thinks Rey was a good character, just written badly. But I don't know.
I didn't. I mean, I don't know. I mean, whatever.
They're just. Here's the thing. I think most people can agree that they were disappointments. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah.
But you know what's not going to be a disappointment sequel is Titan 2. What's the elevator pitch for Titan 2, Gary? If you had to sell somebody that was not familiar with your work, how would you sell them on Titan in general? What would you say to them?
I would say, get ready to get your mind blown.
There you go. There you go.
Has your mind been blown? Have you been discouraged about the comic book industry? Well, say no more. Enter Titan, Mouse of Might.
There you go.
He's going to rip your heart out
In a world. Right,
and serve it to you on a cracker.
There you go. If
And
that didn't
then-
sell you, I don't know what would.
And then sew it back and give you a hug.
He's just that nice. He's willing to sew the heart back together and give you a hug at the end of it.
He's going to break your heart, and
There
then
you
he's
go.
going to mend it.
Well, if you think about what we've been talking about, Gary, that's not a terrible example, right? Because you want to bring those characters to a point of pain and suffering, but you also believe in hope. As a Christian, I would guess that your view of the end times is at the end there's a glorious return, and that there is an immense amount of hope, and so that's kind of reflected in your work, is that you're not a nihilist that just thinks that everything's gonna be terrible forever. Am I correct in that assumption?
You are correct, but I do think that we are on humanity is on I'm going to bring this way down.
There you go.
We're on a suicide
Whoa.
track to destruction apart from the living God. And it's actually can be kind of frightening, I guess you could say, in one way, but not frightening in another. It's like everything's fine. God has it all under
Right.
control.
Yep.
So if you keep looking at the God side of bad things, the glory side of bad things, because bad things are going to happen, but that doesn't mean that God is not good and that he has a good plan that's going to work out. It ain't going to work out the way maybe we think, but it is definitely going to work out.
Right. I agree. There's this song by Stephen Curtis Chapman called God is God. I'm just going to read some of these lyrics here that I think sort of are a nice poetic way to say what we're kind of talking about here. I'll just read the lyrics. It says, "And the pain falls like a curtain on the things I once called certain. And I have to say the words I fear the most, I just don't know. And the questions without answers come and paralyze the dancer. So I stand here on the stage, afraid to move, afraid to fall. Oh, but fall I must, on this truth that my life has been formed from the dust. God is God, and I am not. I can only see a part of the picture he's painting. God is God, and I am man. So I'll never understand it all. For only God is God." It goes on. I mean, there's more to the song, but that's that he wrote that after his eldest son, I think, ran over his youngest daughter in a car and she was killed.
Wow.
Imagine like that kind of suffering, and that's what comes out of it. Or you think of, what's the song? We were just talking about at church. What's the song? With the guy on the boat.
I can't hardly hear you.
It is well.
Oh, so It Is Well, Gary. You're familiar with this song? It Is Well with My Soul.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And the guy that wrote that, I mean, he wrote it after all of his children died in quick succession. You know, his daughters died on this boat trip, and his wife sends him back this telegram saying, like, I survived alone. You know, all the daughters died. And it was a place of immense suffering, and that's what he writes. And you see that in the Psalms too. Like, David is often in these places of immense suffering, children dying, or just other forms of suffering, and that's when he writes these things like, I will rest in the Lord. It is well with my soul. You know, I will find my comfort and strength in God alone. And though I may not understand it, there's rest and comfort in God, and I think you're right when you say that, you know, like you put it, that a suicidal path, right? It's damaging to society, and it's damaging to those people unto the point of death. There is a sense in which this will not end well for the people that are on this path. But yet there's hope.
Indeed.
Let's see. Captain Hilt says, get ready to have your mind 83% blown with Titan. And then the remaining 17% slowly crumble with Edge.
And then only to be brought back again.
By Packin's Land.
With the Packin's Land coloring book.
That's right.
So yes, I'm thinking about doing a Titan coloring book.
There you go.
You know, get the family in there, having a family coloring night.
Right. Humphrey Bear wants to know, why does that guy have C-3PO's arm?
Because this is Steven Starlight.
Well, that's not Steven Starlight.
Deconstruction.
Deconstructed. It's sort of, maybe it is. I mean, he's got the hair. Oh, jeez. I didn't even realize that. Oh, man, we just 90s-ified Steven Starlight. This is horrible, Gary. What have we done? Bastardization of Steven Starlight here.
It's a beautiful thing.
Oh, man.
Well, anyways, I'm going to have to bounce.
All right, Gary, thank you for joining me.
This was fun.
Yes.
Don't forget the fanny
I hope we can do it again.
What's that?
Don't forget the fanny pack.
Oh, yeah, we got it. You can't forget the fanny pack, Gary. You forgot the fanny pack. So
Oh, I did forget that.
maybe you can put him holding it in that hand that you haven't finished there. All right, thanks, Gary. Thanks, everybody, for streaming with me.